Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. Of course, it is 7:46 p.m. and today's date is the 13th of May 2025. With that being said, the legend, the OG, the 45th, and now the 47th President of the United States, he is or was in Saudi Arabia, and a lot happened. A lot happened. We're going to do a recap of everything that happened. And as well, New Jersey, Newark International Airport, what is going on with the air traffic controllers. But most importantly, we're going to take a look at Trump's trip to Saudi Arabia and the USA-China trade deal. Okay? People said the China-United States trade deal would never happen. Of course, this man guessed SHIT done. Okay? He guessed it done. People hate him for it, but he guessed shit done. Okay? That's all I can tell you. With that being said, straight to the business.
President Trump in Saudi Arabia, his first stop in a high-stakes Middle East visit. The president today signaling several new agreements with Saudi Arabia and announcing plans to lift sanctions on Syria. CNN's Jeff Zeleny in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Jeff?
Jake, the president just concluded a whirlwind day here in Riyadh that often had the feel of a day on the campaign trail with him, with many promises, mingling with some of the world's most wealthy and successful business leaders, even as they were trying to get their time with him. Now, there were a lot of promises discussed, Jake, but there were fewer discussions about how those geopolitical challenges may be solved. The trumpets rang out today for President Trump on a royal welcome to Saudi Arabia. There was pomp, pageantry, and even Arabian horses to mark the moment of Trump's foray back to the Middle East on his first major overseas trip since returning to power.
What a great place, but more importantly, what great people.
The president lavished praise on Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and invested more time on deal-making than diplomacy. Yet he did unveil a major change in U.S. policy, calling for an end to sanctions in Syria. He's set to meet for the first time Wednesday with President Ahmed al-Sharar, who led the December rebellion to oust dictator Bashar al-Assad.
The sanctions were brutal and crippling and served as an important function, nevertheless, at the time. But now it's their time to shine.
Trump also implored Iran to find a way to end its nuclear program.
I'm here today not merely to condemn the past chaos of Iran's leaders, but to offer them a new path and a much better path toward a far better and more hopeful future.
And he looked ahead to the prospect of extending the Abraham Accords to one day normalize relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, as neighboring UAE and Bahrain did in 2020.
My fervent hope, wish, and even my dream that Saudi Arabia will soon be joining the Abraham Accords. You'll do it in your own time, and that's what I want, and that's what you want.
He devoted little time to one of the biggest obstacles of all, the unresolved conflict in Gaza. He is notably not visiting Israel on this trip, unlike he did on his first trip here 8 years ago.
The people of Gaza deserve a much better future.
From morning to nightfall, Trump took part in a day-long series of events, many of which included...
Nobody works hard like this president. I do not care what y'all are talking about. Man.
Some of the world's business elite, among them Elon Musk, who is set to leave the White House later this month. Trump touted a $600 billion investment commitment from Saudi Arabia, whose crown prince stayed at the president's side, sending a clear message of his high standing with this administration.
He's an incredible man. Known him a long time now. There's nobody like him.
It was a marked departure from former President Joe Biden's fist bump and his vow to make the kingdom a pariah after the 2018 murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi, a killing that today went without mention as Trump hailed the crown prince.
Oh, what I do for the crown prince.
So the president said he would never let Iran obtain a nuclear weapon, but he did extend a hand and say he was eager to have a nuclear discussion with Iran. And that, Jake, taken together with the ending of sanctions in Syria, offered something of a 1-2 punch, if you will, against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Of course, he is not on this itinerary. That is widely seen in the region as a snub. There is just no question about that. But the president tomorrow will have a brief meeting with the new Syrian leader here before making his way on the rest of his journey, continuing in Doha. Jake?
All right, Jeff Zeleny in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Thanks so much. President Trump's visit to Qatar tomorrow comes as he faces some backlash, even from Republicans in the United States, and even from some of his most diehard supporters after he tried to defend plans for him to accept a luxury plane from the Qatari royal family to serve as Air Force One for the remainder of his presidency, and then for him to take to the Trump Presidential Library. Let's bring in CNN Chief Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst John Miller. So, John, you're an expert on lots of things. I'm not going to get into the ethics of it all. But President Trump once treated Qatar as a pariah. He called out Qatar's ties to terrorism. Obviously, the political leadership of Hamas are headquartered in Qatar. Take a listen to how Trump talked about Qatar in his first term.
The nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism. The time had come to call on Qatar to end its funding. They have to end that funding and its extremist ideology in terms of funding.
So what's your take on all this as somebody well steeped in not only law enforcement but intelligence matters? Do you have any issues with him accepting this plane?
Well, it's certainly a sign that Qatar knows its customer. It is very customary, Jake, as you know from having been there, when someone important in the region shows up, that they are given gifts and remembrances and so on. If you introduce Donald Trump to the concept of a plane that was designed for a prince, where the trimming is, polished wood and lots of gold inside, if you know your customer, you know that's going to get his attention. Now, from a legal sense, the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has said, well, this is legal because it's a transfer from one government of a piece of military equipment to another government. It happens all the time. But as an intelligence officer, when you stand back and look at it, that's not what it really is. It's a gift of an airplane, especially for Donald Trump in his presidency, with the proviso that when he leaves the presidency, he gets to take it with him as a gift to his presidential library, which he has the use of. So I guess we got to call it what it is. It is the largest gift a foreign government has ever given to a U.S. leader in American history. And that's a real ethical question.
So as an intelligence matter, how can the United States government be sure that there aren't any bugs or spyware or anything on that plane? I would think it would be close to impossible to be 100% confident.
A plane is literally made of wires and electronics. It is, in terms of hiding listening devices or other intelligence gathering devices, you're literally being able to hide a tree in a forest full of trees. You would have to look at it very carefully. And by the way, that is not to assume that the Qataris would bug Donald Trump or the President of the United States, although you'd have to cover that possibility. That is to assume that we don't know who made it for the Qataris, where they bought it, who those people were, whether they had clearances. But this is a larger thing. The Qataris have refashioned themselves into a state that was once an outcast in the Middle East from other Arab nations, including Saudi Arabia, to kind of a boutique superpower, a place that's doing what the United Nations can't seem to do, which is bringing parties together, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, Hamas, and Israel, the Chad and Rwanda, all kinds of places are coming there to negotiate ceasefires, peace deals, agreements, and that has given them outsized standing beyond their size, beyond their wealth, as a real player on the world stage. And this plane is another flex. Now you have to ask yourself, Jake, well, what are the Saudis supposed to come up with now that Qatar has made this gesture? It really complicates things.
Well, and also just the idea.
The Saudis are going to come up with the new White House. Okay.
That anybody, any world leader, forget Qatar or whatever, would do this just to be nice just to make a nice gesture and not to expect anything in return.
Well, that comes back to, it is what it is.
Right. John Miller, thanks so much. Let's bring in retired 4-star Navy Admiral James Stavridis, the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO and the partner of the Carlyle Group, which is an international investment firm. So, Admiral Stavridis, should the Trump administration accept this plane from Qatar if he asked you for your counsel? And what does it signal to Qatar and other Middle Eastern countries that are looking to make closer relations with the United States, with the Trump administration?
No, they should not accept the plane. You've outlined the key reasons. Number one, the source. So this is simply inappropriate to come from a nation that has also funded Hamas, that has close ties with the Iranian regime. Number two, it's the ethics of it. You said, well, we're not going to talk about ethics.
Well, I meant with John.
You got to talk about the ethics of this. And having been a senior official who would receive gifts as Supreme Allied Commander, you can't accept anything above a couple of $100. So how is it that you can receive this $400 million gift? So there's an ethical problem. And then I think worst of all is where you started to go with John a moment ago. You'd have to take this plane apart. You'd have to take it down to the studs and then rebuild it. So it doesn't make much sense from a cost perspective. And also, who knows who's been in, around, through that plane. I think it is a non-starter to accept it.
$400 million Trojan horse, perhaps. Who knows?
Trojan horse. Oh my goodness. These folks right here say it's a Trojan horse type situation. All right, here we go. So, of course, we know the OG, the 45th, now the 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, was in Saudi Arabia, still in, and we're going to check out everything he did today, okay? Take a look at his speech.
For the weekend, we reached a breakthrough.
Here we go. This man went to Qatar, and he's right there playing Lee Greenwood. God bless the United States. That's just legendary. All right. The OG in Saudi right here.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. What a great place. What a great place, but more importantly, what great people. I want to thank His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, for that incredible introduction. He's an incredible man. Known him a long time now. There's nobody like him. Thank you very much. Appreciate it very much, my friend. And it's a tremendous honor to return to this beautiful kingdom and be welcomed back with such extraordinary generosity and warmth. I've never forgotten the exceptional hospitality showed to us by King Salman, who's just, we talk about a great man. That is a great man. That is a great man, a great family. And that visit took place exactly 8 years ago. The graciousness of the royal family and the Saudi people is really unsurpassed, no matter where you go. Let me also thank the countless ministers, government officials, business leaders, and distinguished guests for that warm welcome. Very warm, and I know so many of you. I'd like to call out all of your names, but we have a lot of problems. We'd be here for a long time. We don't want that, so don't be upset. With this historic state visit, we celebrate more than 80 years of close partnership between the United States and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Ever since President Franklin Roosevelt met with King Salman's father, King Abdul Aziz, aboard the USS Quincy in 1945, the U.S.-Saudi relationship has been a bedrock of security and prosperity. Today, we reaffirm this important bond, and we take the next steps to make our relationship closer, stronger, and more powerful than ever before. It is more powerful than ever before. And by the way, it will remain that way. We don't go in and out like other people. It will remain that way. I've come this afternoon to talk about the bright future of the Middle East, but first let me begin by sharing the abundance of good news from a place called America. In less than 4 months, our new administration has achieved more than most other administrations accomplish in 4 years or even 8 years. We've actually done, for the most part, more. The day I took office, we inherited, thank you. Thank you. The day I took office, we inherited a colossal invasion on our southern border, an invasion like you'd never want to see here. Nobody should ever want to see it. But within weeks, we slashed illegal border crossings to an all-time low, down 99.999%. That's good, even for this great gentleman standing right in front of me. That's a good number. We had hundreds of thousands of people. They came in at the same time last year. And last month, we had, in this massive border, 3 people that got in. That's quite a difference. And we have no choice but to get a lot of the people that came in because they were not the best people. They were, in many cases, very bad people. We're getting them out. We're getting them out very fast. We're bringing them back to where they came from. We have no choice. After years of military recruiting shortfalls, enlistments in the U.S. Armed Forces are now the highest in 30 years because there is such an incredible spirit in the United States of America. We have tremendous spirit again. Just about a year ago, it was a big story, front page on every paper all over the world, that nobody wanted to enlist in our military, meaning we were way under enlisted. And just last week it came out that we had the strongest enlistment. They say 30 years, but probably it's maybe ever. They don't go back that far. It's the best, and that includes police officers, firemen, everything else. There's a great spirit in the United States right now. A brand new poll from Rasmussen just showed that the number of Americans who believe the nation is on the right track, they have a right track, wrong track, is now the highest in over 20 years. And it hasn't been anything like this because for many years it was the wrong track. And I can tell you for the last 4 years it was definitely the wrong track. But it's the highest it's been in many, many years. We renamed the Gulf of Mexico into the Gulf of America. That was very popular, other than perhaps with Mexico. And most importantly for the people in this room, the days of economic misery under the last administration are rapidly giving way to the greatest economy in the history of the world. We are rocking. The United States is the hottest country, with the exception of your country, I have to say, right? I'm not going to take that on. No, Mohammed, I'm not going to take that on. Wouldn't that be a terrible thing if I made that full statement? But I will not do it. You're hotter. At least as long as I'm up here, you're hotter.
You're hotter.
But groceries, gasoline, energy, and all other prices are down with no inflation. We have no inflation, and in a few short weeks, we've created 464,000 brand new jobs. Think of that. It's almost 500,000 jobs created just in a matter of weeks. We just reached a historic trade agreement with the United Kingdom, and over the weekend we reached a breakthrough agreement with China. Both outstanding deals. China's agreed. We have to get it down. We have to get the little details down. And Scott, you're going to work on that very hard, but China's agreed to open up to the United States for trade and everything else. But they have to do it, so we'll see what happens. But we had a very, very good meeting with both of those countries. We are cutting 10 old regulations for every new regulation. We're getting rid of all of the red tape that is so many, frankly, countries, as they get older, they develop a lot of red tape, and we're getting rid of it. We're getting rid of it at record levels. And I'm pleased to report that the United States Congress is on the verge of passing the largest tax cut and regulation cut in American history. We think we're in good shape to get that. And if we get that, that will be like a rocket ship for our country. In the first quarter of the year, the investment in America was up an astounding 22%. More than $10 trillion of new investments have been announced or are coming just since the election on November 5th. So think of that. In a very short period of time, we have over $10 trillion, and it could be much higher than that. Not everybody comes to the White House to have a news conference that they're going to be opening up in America, but they're all coming in at numbers that we've never seen before. If you take a look at other presidencies, they wouldn't do $1 trillion sometime in years. We did this in essentially 2 months because you have to say we got into office and they gave me about a month to clean up and fix up the Oval Office. And after that, we started working. And the money is pouring in, the jobs are pouring in, the companies are pouring into our country like we've never seen before. There's never been anything like it. And we let other people tariff us into losing a lot of money and a lot of jobs, and now we're tariffing them. And it's at a level that nobody's seen. It's a level that is making us a very much different country and a very different Republican Party. We won a tremendous victory in November. We won all 7 swing states, the popular vote by millions and millions of votes. The Electoral College we won by 312 to 226. Remember they said, well, we could get to 270. No, we got to 312. That's a big difference. And very importantly, we won counties throughout the United States, 2,660 to 451. That's why when you look at a map, they're all red. It's all, the whole country is red. Red stands for Republican. From the moment on and from the moment we started, we've seen wealth that just poured and is pouring back into America. Apple is investing $500 billion. NVIDIA is investing, and I see my friend is here, Jensen. That's very good, wherever you may be. I thank you very much, because he's putting in $500 billion. TSMC is investing. Where is Jensen, by the way? Where is he? He's standing here. Where is he? I just saw that. Thank you very much, Jensen. I mean, Tim Cook isn't here, but you are. What a job you've done. He said he's got 99% of the chip market. I don't know. That's a big, that's not easy to beat. But what a job you've done. Thank you. We are proud to have you in our country. You know that. Thank you for the investment. TSMC is investing $200 billion, and with this trip, we're adding over $1 trillion more in terms of investment into our country and buying our products. And you know, nobody makes military equipment like us. We have the best military equipment, the best missiles, the best rockets, the best everything. Best submarines, by the way. Most lethal weapon in the world. In addition to purchases of $142 billion of American-made military equipment by our great Saudi partners, the largest ever. This week there are multi-billion-dollar commercial deals with Amazon, Oracle, AMD. They're all here. Uber, Qualcomm, Johnson & Johnson, and many, many more. So I want to congratulate everybody. So many great business executives, many of you, most of you I know. And they're coming in, you know, about a month ago. They weren't that happy when they saw me. And now they're saying, sir, you're doing a great job. Thank you very much. It's amazing what a rising market will do. Oh, it's going to get a lot higher. In fact, I told people 5 weeks ago, this is a great time to buy. I got criticized for that. Now they don't criticize me anymore. People should have listened. But it's going to go a lot higher. You're going to see, we've never had anything like this happen. It's an explosion of investment and jobs, and great companies are coming in. Never seen anything like it. There's no better place to make a future or make a fortune, do anything, frankly, than what we have in the United States of America under a certain President, Donald J. Trump. I have the right attitude. I have the same attitude that the people in the front row, second row, third row have. As you get back, perhaps they start to wane a little bit in terms of their view. But they understand, and we're doing what a lot of smart people would do. And we're not necessarily being politically correct. You saw what we did yesterday with health care. We've cut our health care by 50 to 90%. You're going to see drugs and pharmaceuticals come down at numbers that nobody has ever seen. And drugs, pharmaceuticals, we think will be dropping. And it'll be a redistribution of costs with other nations, which really took advantage of a very nice group of people that ran our country. But not only is this a time of incredible excitement in the United States, it's also an exhilarating period right here in the Arabian Peninsula. Beautiful place, by the way. Beautiful place. Exactly. Thank you. Exactly 8 years ago this month, I stood in this very room and looked forward to a future in which the nations of this region would drive the forces of terrorism and extremism, drive them right out of existence, and take your place among the proudest, most prosperous, most successful nations anywhere in the world as leaders of a modern and rising Middle East. So exciting, so exciting. Mohammed, do you sleep at night? How do you sleep? Huh? Just thinking. What a job. He tosses and turns like some of us. Tosses and turns all night. How do I make it even better all night? It's the ones that don't toss and turn. They're the ones that will never take you to the promised land, won't they?
Thanks.
But you have done some job. True. But critics doubted that it was possible what you've done. But over the past 8 years, Saudi Arabia has proved the critics totally wrong. The transformation that has occurred even by these incredible business leaders. I mean, you had the biggest leaders in business anywhere in the world standing right before us. But the transformation that has occurred under the leadership of King Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed has been truly extraordinary. Such a thing has, I don't think, ever happened before. I've never seen anything at that scale happen before. And I guess, you know, maybe you could say the United States is doing pretty well, too, you know, but I don't think too many people have seen that happen before. Majestic skyscrapers, the towers that I see, the difference between now and 8 years ago. And 8 years ago was very impressive, but the towers that I see rising, some of the exhibits that I was shown by Mohammed, what I've seen there is just an amazing, it's an amazing process, amazing genius of so many people, architecture, but I have a feeling I know where many of those ideas came from. Happens to be sitting right in this room right before me, but the towers and all of the different, I've seen a lot of different towers. I didn't think there's any version of a tower that I haven't seen in one form or another. I just passed 4 exhibits. I have never seen anything like any of them. So it's going to be very exciting. And they sit among the ancient wonders of a growing and exciting city. It's really amazing. Riyadh is becoming not just a seat of government, but a major business, cultural, and high-tech capital of the entire world. The World Cup is here. Johnny, just stand up, Johnny. Johnny. Thank you, Johnny.
Respect. Take a look at the respect, yo. Nah, man.
Great job, Johnny. Great job. But the World Cup and the World Expo will soon be coming here, just like the World Cup is coming to the United States. It's going to be really exciting next year. The engines of Formula One racing now roar through the streets of Jeddah in a historic milestone. Other industries recently surpassed oil. Think of it, all of your other industries now have surpassed oil. I don't know if a lot of people will understand what that means. It's so big to make up a majority of the Saudi economy for the very first time ever. So think of that. Other industries are now bigger even than oil, which is always going to be a big monster. It's a big one. But that's a great tribute to you and economic development properly used. In other cities throughout the peninsula, places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, Doha, Muscat, the transformations have been unbelievably remarkable. Before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that. And it's crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done. In the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the interventionists were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand themselves. They told you how to do it, but they had no idea how to do it themselves. Peace, prosperity, and progress ultimately came not from a radical rejection of your heritage, but rather from embracing your national traditions and embracing that same heritage that you love so dearly. And it's something only you could do. You achieved a modern miracle, the Arabian way. That's a good way. Today, the Gulf nations have shown this entire region a path towards safe and orderly societies with improving quality of life, flourishing economic growth, expanding personal freedoms, and increasing responsibilities on the world stage. After so many decades of conflict, finally it is within our grasp to reach the future that generations before us could only dream about, a land of peace, safety, harmony, opportunity, innovation, and achievement right here in the Middle East. So beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing that's happening. I guess, you know, the people that are here can't even really appreciate it because you see it happening, and it's when you come to a place that you haven't seen in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years that it's even more incredible. When I left office just over 4 years ago, that future seemed almost impossible, what you've done. Together we had obliterated the killers of ISIS. We wiped them out, terminated its founder and leader, al-Baghdadi. We had healed the divide in the Gulf Cooperation Council, it's a very big deal, and united the nations of the region to stand against the enemies of all civilization. We'd imposed unprecedented sanctions on Iran and starved the regime of resources to fund terror. They were unable to fund anything because they had no money left. They had no money. But the new administration came in and let them have a lot of money, and you saw what happened. It was not money well spent. And with the historic Abraham Accords that we're so proud of, all the momentum was aimed at peace, and it aimed very successfully. It's been an amazing thing, the Abraham Accords, and it's my fervent hope, wish, and even my dream that Saudi Arabia, a place I have such respect for, especially over the last fairly short period of time what you've been able to do, but we'll soon be joining the Abraham Accords. I think it'll be a tremendous tribute to your country, and it will be something that's really going to be very important for the future of the Middle East. I took a risk in doing them, and they've been an absolute bonanza for the countries that have joined. The Biden administration did nothing for 4 years. We would have had it filled out. But it will be a special day in the Middle East with the whole world
waiting for him to say
when Saudi
Biden.
Arabia joins us, and you'll be greatly honoring me, and you'll be greatly honoring all of those people that have fought so hard for the Middle East. And I really think it's going to be something special, but you'll do it in your own time, and that's what I want, and that's what you want, and that's the way it's going to be. When I left office, the only thing still standing between this region and its unbelievable potential was a small group of rogue actors and violent thugs seeking constantly to drag the Middle East backward and into havoc, mayhem, and indeed into war. Unfortunately, instead of confronting these destructive forces, the last U.S. administration chose to enrich them and empower them and give them billions and billions of dollars. The Biden administration, the worst administration in the history of our country, by the way, spurned our most trusted and longstanding Gulf partners, and I can say partners worldwide, one of our great, great partners, no matter who we look to, and we have great partners in the world, but we have none stronger and nobody like the gentleman that's right before me. He's your greatest representative, greatest representative. And if I didn't like him, I'd get out of here so fast. You know that, don't you? He knows me well. I do. I like him a lot. I like him too much. That's why we give so much, you know? Too much. I like you too much. Great guy. They lifted sanctions on Iran in exchange for getting nothing, and sent the regime tens of billions of dollars to fund terror and death all over the world. And they laughed at him. They laughed at our leader. And they're still laughing at our leader. They thought him a fool. And they made nothing but trouble ever since, including the funding of October 7th, one of the worst days ever in the history of the Middle East. Horrible day. Biden removed the Houthis from the list of foreign terrorist organizations, even while missiles and drones were being launched right here at your beautiful city of Riyadh, and launched at ships if they happened to be sailing in the wrong location. The Biden administration's extreme weakness and gross incompetence derailed progress toward peace, destabilized the region, and put at risk everything we had worked so hard to build together. And when you think of the great achievements that you've made, to do it in light of a pretty hostile administration, an administration that was not a believer, it makes your achievements even greater. Makes them even greater, you know that. But in a few short months since taking office, we have achieved the swift return of American strength at home and abroad, now working with the vast majority of people in this region who seek stability and calm. Our task is to unify against the few agents of chaos and terror that are left and that are holding hostage the dreams of millions and millions of great people. The biggest and most destructive of these forces is the regime in Iran, which has caused unthinkable suffering in Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, Iraq, Yemen, and beyond. There could be no sharper contrast with the path you have pursued on the Arabian Peninsula than the disaster unfolding right across in the Gulf of Iran. Think of that. They wanted to name it that. I said, they're not going to let them do that. Do you mind if I stop that? I stopped it. We're not going to let that happen. While you have been constructing the world's tallest skyscrapers in Jeddah and Dubai, Tehran's 1979 landmarks are collapsing into rubble and dust. They had it going for a little while under a much different system, but those buildings are largely falling apart, falling down, while you're building some of the world's biggest and most incredible infrastructure projects, buildings, all sorts of things you're building that nobody's ever even seen before. Iran's decades of neglect and mismanagement have left the country plagued by rolling blackouts lasting for hours a day. All the time you hear about it. While your skill has turned dry deserts into fertile farmland, Iran's leaders have managed to turn green farmland into dry deserts as their corrupt water mafia, it's called it the water mafia, causes droughts and empty riverbeds. They get rich, but they don't let the people have any of it. And then, of course, there's the key difference at the root of it all. While the Arab states have focused on becoming pillars of regional stability and world commerce, Iran's leaders have focused on stealing their people's wealth to fund terror and bloodshed abroad. Most tragic of all, they have dragged down an entire region with them. Countless lives were lost in the Iranian effort to maintain a crumbling regime in Syria. Look at what happened with Syria. In Lebanon, their Hezbollah proxies have pillaged the hopes of a nation whose capital, Beirut, was once called the Paris of the Middle East. Can you imagine? All of this misery and so much more was entirely avoidable, absolutely avoidable. And Mohammed knew that. He knew that. Smart people knew that. If only the Iranian regime had focused on building their nation up instead of tearing the region down. Yet I'm here today not merely to condemn the past chaos of Iran's leaders, but to offer them a new path and a much better path toward a far better and more hopeful future. As I've shown repeatedly, I am willing to end past conflicts and forge new partnerships for a better and more stable world, even if our differences may be very profound, which obviously they are in the case of Iran. I have never believed in having permanent enemies. I am different than a lot of people think. I don't like permanent enemies, but sometimes you need enemies to do the job, and you have to do it right. Enemies get you motivated. In fact, some of the closest friends of the United States of America are nations we fought wars against in generations past, and now they're our friends and our allies. I want to make a deal with Iran. If I can make a deal with Iran, I'll be very happy if we're going to make your region and the world a safer place. But if Iran's leadership rejects this olive branch and continues to attack their neighbors, then we will have no choice but to inflict massive, maximum pressure, drive Iranian oil exports to zero like I did before. If you know that, they were a virtually bankrupt country. Because of what I did, they had no money for terror, they had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, and take all action required to stop the regime from ever having a nuclear weapon. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. But with that said, Iran can have a much brighter future, but will never allow America and its allies to be threatened with terrorism or nuclear attack. The choice is theirs to make. We really want them to be a successful country. We want them to be a wonderful, safe, great country. But they cannot have a nuclear weapon. This is an offer that will not last forever. The time is right now for them to choose. Right now, we don't have a lot of time to wait. Things are happening at a very fast pace. They're happening right here. They're happening at a very fast pace. So they have to make their move right now, one way or the other. Make your move. As I said in my inaugural address, my greatest hope is to be a peacemaker and to be a unifier. I don't like war. We have the greatest military, by the way, in the history of the world. You know, I rebuilt our military in my first 4 years and rebuilt it into the most powerful military there is. And you saw that when I knocked out ISIS in 3 weeks. People said it would take 4 years, 5 years. I did it. We did it in 3 weeks. Just days ago, my administration successfully brokered a historic ceasefire to stop the escalating violence between India and Pakistan. And I used trade to a large extent to do it. I said, fellas, come on, let's make a deal. Let's do some trading. Let's not trade nuclear missiles. Let's trade the things that you make so beautifully. And they both have very powerful leaders, very strong leaders, good leaders, smart leaders. And it all stopped. Hopefully it'll remain that way, but it all stopped. I was very proud of Marco Rubio and all of the people that worked so hard. Marco, stand up. What a great job you did on that. Thank you, J.D. Vance, Marco. The whole group worked with you, but it was a great job. And I think they're actually getting along. Maybe we can even get them together a little bit, Marco, where they go out and have a nice dinner together. Wouldn't that be nice? But we've come a long way, and it's could be, you know, millions of people could have died from that conflict that started off small and was getting bigger and bigger and bigger by the day. I've also been working relentlessly to end the terrible bloodshed between Russia and Ukraine, and very importantly, talks are being held in Turkey later this week, probably on Thursday, and they could produce some pretty good results. Our people are going to be going there. Marco's going to be going there. Others are going to be going, and we'll see if we can get it done. 5,000 people, young people for the most part, soldiers from Ukraine, soldiers from Russia. They're not from here and they're not from the United States, but they're souls. They're souls. I think usually, mostly, they're young, beautiful souls that left their parents waving goodbye, left their brothers and sisters. Goodbye, I'll see you soon. And they got blown to pieces. 5,000 on average a week are dying. And people are dying elsewhere in the region, but tremendous numbers like we haven't seen since World War II are dying, and I want to stop it. I want to stop it. It's a horrible war. Would have never happened if I were president. That's a war that would have never happened. October 7th would have never happened if I were president, because Iran had no money to pay Hamas or anybody else. They had no money. They were not looking to take care of them. They had to take care of themselves. They had no money. We stopped their oil effectively with the embargoes and sanctions. But let me take this opportunity to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the constructive role that you've played in facilitating the Ukraine talks. And it really is, you've been amazing. You've made everything available to us. Thank you very much. Thank you. And if we get that settled, we'll pay a special tribute to what you've done. You really did lay a great groundwork. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. The West should not be dragging itself backward into another endless war in Europe, yet another endless war. We should stop the killing and work together to address the biggest long-term threats as one unbeatable team. Think of us as an unbeatable team. I mean, when you look at what you've done here, that's much more difficult than stopping stupidity. Think of it. It's stupidity. What you've done is much more difficult, and you did it better than anybody else has ever done it. As President of the United States, my preference will always be for peace and partnership whenever those outcomes can be achieved. Always. It's always going to be that way. Only a fool would think otherwise. In recent years, far too many American presidents have been afflicted with the notion that it's our job to look into the souls of foreign leaders and use U.S. policy to dispense justice for their sins. They loved using our very powerful military, and now it's really the most powerful it's ever been. We just are getting a budget approved, $1 trillion, highest budget we've ever had in history for military, $1 trillion. And we're getting the greatest missiles, the greatest weapons. And, you know, I hate to do it, but you have to do it because we believe in peace through strength. You have to have the strength, otherwise bad things could happen. But hopefully we'll never have to use any of those weapons. Seems to be an awfully big waste of money if you're never going to use them, but hopefully we'll never have to use them, because the destructive power of some of those weapons are like nobody's seen before. I believe it is God's job to sit in judgment, my job to defend America, and to promote the fundamental interest of stability, prosperity, and peace. That's what I really want to do. I will never hesitate to wield American power if it's necessary to defend the United States or to help defend our allies. And there will be no mercy for any foe who tries to do us or them harm. We will have no mercy. They understand that. That's why I've been pretty lucky. A lot of people think, you know, he's looking to fight. He's looking to fight, and things get settled. It's an amazing thing when they really think you mean it. But we do. We have the greatest military, the strongest military, stronger than any. Nobody's even close. We have the best weapons in the world, but we don't want to use them. If you threaten America or our partners, however, then you'll be faced with overwhelming strength and devastating force. We have things that you don't even know about, you don't hear about, and if you did, you'd say, wow. In recent weeks, following repeated attacks on American ships and freedom of navigation in the Red Sea, the United States military launched more than 1,100 strikes on the Houthis in Yemen. As a result, the Houthis agreed to stop. They said, we don't want this anymore. It's the first time you've heard that from them, too. They're tough. They're fighters. But just days ago, we were asked to cease targeting commercial. They were not going to be targeting commercial ships in any way, shape, or form, or anything American. And they were very happy that we stopped. But we had 52 days of thunder and lightning like they've never seen before. This was a swift, ferocious, decisive, and extremely successful use of military force. Not that we wanted to do it, but they were shooting down ships. They were shooting at you. They were shooting at Saudi Arabia. We don't want them shooting at Saudi Arabia, if that's okay. So we hit them hard. We got what we came for, and then we got out. Since January 20th, the U.S. military has terminated 83 terrorist leaders operating across Iraq, Syria, and Somalia, including ISIS's #2 global leader. You read about that just recently. With the help of Pakistan, we apprehended the ISIS terrorists responsible for the attack on 13 American service members at Abbey Gate, that horrible, horrible disaster. During this Afghanistan withdrawal, you know, that's another thing that we don't even think about so much anymore. 13 died, but 42 were horribly wounded. But hundreds of people died overall, because I count the people on the other side. Hundreds of people just grossly incompetent. It's probably why Putin decided to go into Ukraine, something he never would have done if I were president. But we wouldn't have had the problems of October 7th if I were president. We wouldn't have had Ukraine, Russia if I were president. We wouldn't have had Abbey Gate, because there wouldn't have been any reason we were getting out, but we were getting out with dignity and with strength and power. But the way they got out was not good. I think it was the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And we've been working tirelessly to bring back all hostages held by Hamas. We brought back a lot already, but we're bringing back more. This weekend, we successfully negotiated the release of the last American hostage, Edan Alexander. Just came out a few hours ago, and we continue to work to get that war ended as quickly as possible. It's a horrible thing that's taking place. All civilized people must condemn the October 7th atrocities against Israel, which would never have happened again if you had probably a different president, but definitely if you had me as president. The people of Gaza deserve a much better future, but that will or can not occur as long as their leaders choose to kidnap, torture, and target innocent men, women, and children for political ends. The way those people are treated in Gaza, there's not a place in the world where people are treated so badly. It's horrible. After years of suffering, two of the nations most ravaged by terror are finally beginning to end their long nightmares under the new generation of leaders. In Lebanon, where a friend of mine has just become the ambassador. He's going to be great. I said, you know, that could be a very dangerous job. He said, I was born there. I'm Lebanese. I love that country. I said, but it's very dangerous. You know, this is a friend of mine from New York. I said, but it's very dangerous. Are you sure you want to do it? I never thought of him as being a warrior, but he is a warrior. He loves his country. He said, if I'm injured or die, I'm dying for a country that I love. He grew up there. It's horrible what's happened in Lebanon, but you have a great ambassador, I can tell you that. In Lebanon, which has been endlessly victimized by Hezbollah and their sponsor, Iran, a new president and prime minister have brought the first real chance in decades for a more productive partnership with the United States, and we're going to work with their new ambassador and everybody else, Marco, and we're going to see if we can really help them out and let them get over that very high grid that they're going to have to get over. My administration stands ready to help Lebanon create a future of economic development and peace with its neighbors. They have tremendous people in Lebanon, doctors, lawyers, great professional people. I hear it so many times. Likewise, in Syria, which has seen so much misery and death, there is a new government that will hopefully succeed in stabilizing the country and keeping peace. That's what we want to see in Syria. They've had their share of travesty, war, killing, many years. That's why my administration has already taken the first steps toward restoring normal relations between the United States and Syria for the first time in more than a decade. And I'm very pleased to announce that Secretary Marco Rubio will be meeting with the new Syrian foreign minister in Turkey later this week. And very importantly, after discussing the situation in Syria with the Crown Prince, your Crown Prince, and also with President Erdogan of Turkey, who called me the other day and asked for a very similar thing, among others, and friends of mine, people that I have a lot of respect for in the Middle East, I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness.
This is legendary, ladies and gentlemen. This is legendary stuff.
Oh, what I do for the Crown Prince. The sanctions were brutal and crippling and served as an important, really an important function, nevertheless, at the time. But now it's their time to shine. It's their time to shine. We're taking them all off, and they're going to have, I think they're going to have, based on the people and the spirit and everything else that I'm hearing about. So I say, good luck, Syria. Show us something very special like they've done, frankly, in Saudi Arabia. Okay? They're going to show us something special. Very good people. Everywhere we can, my administration is pursuing peaceful engagement, offering a strong and steady hand of friendship to all that will take it in good faith. Together, we have made unprecedented strides and tremendous progress, and we're still just at the dawn of the bright new day that awaits for the people of the Middle East, the great, great people of the Middle East. If the responsible nations of this region seize this moment, put aside your differences and focus on the interests that unite you, then all of humanity will soon be amazed at what they will see right here in this geographic center of the world. It really is. It's like a center of the world and the spiritual heart of its greatest faiths. For the first time in 1,000 years, the world will look at this region not as a place of turmoil and strife and war and death, but as a land of opportunity and hope, just like you've done right here, a cultural and commercial crossroads of the planet Security and stability will lift millions into lives of safety and success, and the nations of this region will be free to realize your highest destinies, honor your proud histories, harness amazing new opportunities, and bring incredible glory to Almighty God. People will come from all over the globe to be inspired by the cities you build, the businesses you create, the technologies you invent, and the beauty, talent, and potential you unleash right in the hearts of your citizens. Each of you will be able to take tremendous pride in the legacy you will leave to your children, because you will have given them the ultimate blessings of prosperity and peace. So important. In the United States, we've launched the golden age of America. It's the golden age. We see it. We see it with all that money, trillions and trillions of dollars pouring in, hundreds of thousands of jobs coming in with it. And with the help of the people of the Middle East, the people in this room, partners throughout the region, the golden age of the Middle East can proceed right alongside of us. We will work together. We will be together. We will succeed together. We will win together.
Absolutely.
And we will always be friends.
There we go. Legendary stuff right here, man.
Excellent.
Say what you want.
So, Mohammed, I want to thank you again very much for having me. And as a representative of what I think is the greatest nation in the world, we are with you all the way, and you have a tremendous future. Thank you very much.
Whoa. What did Trump just say right there? What did Trump just say right there? Now, OG, we are the greatest nation. But I get what he's trying to say. Here we go.
We will work together. We will be together. We will succeed together. We will win together. And we will always be friends.
Facts.
Thank you. So, Mohammed, I want to thank you again very much for having me. And as a representative of what I think is the greatest nation in the world, we are with you all the way. And
all right. He's talking about us. He's talking about us, ladies and gentlemen. He's talking about America, ladies and gentlemen.
Respects to your father.
Yeah, man. This is legendary stuff. This guy, he's trying to create peace around the world. How is that a bad thing?
What do you see 10, 20, 30 years for Saudi Arabia?
I will give you an example. If you look to late 70s, Saudi Arabia GDP is bigger than South Korea. And now South Korea, I think it's the 10th or 11th largest GDP in the world. So we believe if Saudi Arabia and really the perfect track, since that time, we will be among the top 7 GDP globally. I'm trying to get Saudi Arabia back on the right track.
And that was the Crown Prince. Joining us now, the Minister of Economy and Planning, Minister Faisal Ali Brahim. Mr. Minister, thanks for being here. You know, this trip is about getting Saudi on the right track. You are doing these big deals with the U.S. The president characterizes it as $1 trillion worth of investment. How do you all see it here?
So, as you know, Brett, and it's a great pleasure, of course, to be here with you again. As you know, the kingdom's, embarked upon a journey to unlock its potential with Vision 2030. So many elements help the kingdom become prominent in terms of economic power. Mainly that has been coming from oil, but today it is a story about the power of diversification. New sectors that are related to tourism, culture, entertainment, and sports has resulted in a lot of growth and economic drivers and growth engines that didn't exist before. Everything from AI to technology to investments, accessing the great capital markets of the US and the great opportunities in the US to much more. We would love to be competitive in a large and vibrant market and consumer market such as that in the US.
For people who haven't been here, this place has evolved dramatically. I mean, just in the 3 years since I've been here the last time. The percentage of GDP, non-oil percentage, has surpassed 50%.
Absolutely.
That's significant.
For the first time.
For an oil country, that's a big deal.
Yes, and of course, we're not over-celebrating that, but we're acknowledging this as a milestone. What we want to see is more non-oil exports growing, more non-oil exports as a percentage of our manufacturing GDP. We want to see user experience in the services side, especially on the tourism side, second to none. We still have a lot of work to do.
So when I talked to you back on my last trip, here's what you said.
Vision 2030 is about unlocking potential. It's designed to address our long-term economic challenges and risks through three things: diversifying the economy, empowering the youth of the kingdom, and building institutions that can help carry this beyond 2030. This is only an asset that we need to leverage, and it's about connecting energy, connecting data, connecting goods and services, connecting people, all for the betterment of the world at large.
To that goal, how important was this trip?
Today we saw from both speeches, from His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and from President Donald Trump, that there's a lot of common values or a lot of common approaches to addressing global challenges. We heard both leaders talk about peace and prosperity. We heard both leaders talk about dialogue, and we've seen what dialogue has led to in terms of the US and UK deal, US and China deal, and what the Saudi has led also through dialogue in the region to bring more stability. We're talking about prosperity, about investment, about the growth of the private sector, growth of competition and innovation.
There was some news out of that speech from President Trump, a number of pieces, but one of the big ones was that the Syrian president will be here tomorrow because the President Trump announced that sanctions against Syria were going to be pulled. It seems like there is, and I saw the Crown Prince applauding loudly, so he's definitely for that. It seems like there is going to be an effort to bring Syria into the fold. Is that what you see?
What we see is the need in a country such as Syria for institutional capabilities to do the right thing. Institutional capabilities can be created through, they have a challenge with the institutions there. The kingdom has stepped in, and other countries in the region, to support Syria financially to go into some of the multilateral platforms. But something as strong and meaningful and material as lifting sanctions could help a country such as Syria to invest more capital in building the institutions they need to be a more stable country, but also bring more stability to the region and be a force for good.
You've been around these two leaders. They seem to have a great relationship.
From what I see is that there is a very strong partnership, and I feel that the friendship is strong and it's built on mutual respect.
They come from different generations. He's 39, he's 78, but they seem to get along. The Crown Prince, from my interaction with him last time, is nonstop. It's like a beehive of action for you ministers especially.
I see common values between both leaders, regardless of age and background, and I think that's one of the things that really brings this mutual respect into the public eye.
If you were to look into the crystal ball and see where Saudi Arabia is, 5, 10, 20 years, what does it look like? Right now, there's a lot of cranes on the horizon, as we notice.
So we want more sources of growth, and we want more channels for that flow to come into the economy. We want a private sector that's dynamic. We're a young population, but in about 20, 25, 30 years, we'll start the aging process. What we should look like at that stage is a government and a private sector and a third sector and academia that is leveraging fully generative AI and other technological tools towards productivity, but also that has created jobs for a lot of Saudis and has been able to, in the process, attract a lot of talent to come to Saudi to make Saudi Arabia their home.
Last thing, I've done a lot of stories about the evolution. What do you tell somebody who may still be skeptical about the kingdom?
Saudi Arabia is a long-term, reliable partner. If you ask anyone who has dealt with the kingdom, government, people, anyone who's visited here, you've visited here a few times already, you can feel that. You can see that this is a society that is strong, led by His Majesty King Salman, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed Salman. Saudi Arabia has always been and always will be a force for good, for innovation.
And it's growing fast.
Absolutely.
Mr. Minister, thanks for the time.
Thank you very much, Brett. Appreciate it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most.
All right, here we go.
All right, thank you very much, you guys. Good afternoon. I'm Martha McCallum, and this is the story breaking right now. President Trump's extraordinary trip to Saudi Arabia. He is at a state dinner right now. You can bet that it is very elaborate based on what we saw in terms of his welcome as he begins his 4-day swing through the Middle East. The goal on this stop, $1 trillion of investment in the U.S. by the Saudis. So far, they have locked in $600 billion in terms of the commitment from Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to invest in everything from defense to infrastructure for AI, a really big part of this trip as well. MBS has suggested that they will get to that $1 trillion mark in investment in time. President Trump given a royal welcome. Arabian stallions escorted the president's vehicle. And how about this? A custom-built mobile McDonald's truck was rolled out for the president's time in Saudi Arabia as well. You can bet he was looking forward to taking part in that. And you can hear a rendition of God Bless the USA as the president took the stage for these remarks as he...
This guy was in Saudi Arabia, and he's praising the United States. Everybody stood up for God Bless the United States. Look at the respect. Dear Lord.
Heralded the growing strength of the new Middle East.
The new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence.
Big message there in that soundbite that you just heard. Senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy following it all live from Riyadh. Hi, Peter.
And Martha, as far as Trump deals have gone since he got back to office in January, today's actually seemed like it was pretty easy. He came in on Air Force One. He talked about how he thought that $600 billion was pretty good, but that he wanted $1 trillion. And then about 4 hours later, that is exactly what the Crown Prince pledged.
In the coming months, we will work on second phase to finalize the remaining agreement to raise them to $1 trillion.
That was easy, and it wasn't just about business deals at this business forum. President Trump talked about how he will soon drop sanctions on Syria on the sidelines of a meeting with Syria's interim president tomorrow to give that country a chance to thrive. He also said that he's going to help Saudi Arabia defend itself from Iran and its proxies, and that he's going to do his very best to make a deal with Tehran to prevent them from ever getting a nuclear weapon.
As I've shown repeatedly, I am willing to end past conflicts and forge new partnerships for a better and more stable world, even if our differences may be very profound, which obviously they are in the case of Iran. I have never believed in having permanent enemies. I am different than a lot of people think. I don't like permanent enemies, but sometimes
who wants
you need
a permanent
enemies to
enemy?
do the job, and you have to do it right.
And at some point,
how do you guys feel that you have a president that can actually walk with his legs without falling off, or doesn't know where to get off the stage, or falling off the airplane stairs? Like, how do you feel that you have a president that goes to Saudi Arabia, secures a $1 trillion deal for the United States? How do you feel that you have a president who isn't walking into the Amazon rainforest to go see the jaguars, the snakes? How do you feel? Let me know.
between Lee Greenwood as the opening song and The Village People as the closing song, President Trump stressed to this crowd that was a mix of half Americans and half Saudi business people that he wants to be known, he wants his legacy to be as a peacemaker in the Middle East. Martha.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here.
All right. More juice. Oh, it's in there. It's in there. Okay, this is for the libs, okay? Because the libs are going to say, Genesis, what about CNN? Let us see some CNN. Here we go. Here we go.
President Trump managing to cool tensions in his global trade war with this week's major, yet temporary, 90-day agreement with China. Worries about future economic instability, of course, are still plaguing Americans and American business leaders. Joining us now to discuss, the director of President Trump's National Economic Council at the White House, Kevin Hassett. Kevin, good to see you. Thanks so much. So we've been talking to small business owners all over the country, left, right, center, pro-Trump, not so much, et cetera, et cetera. My guest today said his toy company was hit with $100 million in tariffs. Many of our guests are struggling to adapt. Is the administration trying to come up with a plan to support small businesses who can't manufacture in the United States, who have tried, but it's just not there, the infrastructure is not there, so that these businesses don't go out of business and or costs are not passed on to consumers?
Well, when I look at the real hard data, Jake, then one of the things I'm seeing is the core GDP was about 3%. The jobs numbers are very positive. There's lots of wage growth. Capital spending was up 20% in the first quarter, which means that there's a lot of onshoring going on. And I think in addition, we've got something like $5 trillion in hard commitments and a whole bunch more. We got $600 billion more from the Saudis today to create jobs in America, to build businesses in America. And the momentum is super positive. And so the sentiment data is going to catch up with the real data. The real data are strong. And imagine that inflation was down, way down in the CPI report today. And it was a month, April, where we had about 20 billion in tariffs. And the story that everybody's been saying is, those tariffs are going to cause prices to go way up. They're going to harm consumers. But clearly we got the revenue. That's good for treasury rates, and it didn't cause inflation. And so I understand that there are individual people with stories that are going to affect them. They're going to have to change their business model some. That's what happens when you onshore production in America and put America workers first.
Sure. Okay. But we talked to a guy today. He owns an educational toy company in Illinois. He's tried to create incentives for there to be manufacturing in the United States. It fails. And he's facing so many tariffs that he doesn't know what he's going to do. 500 families depend on that business. We talked to another guy in Virginia the other day. They manufacture lithium batteries that are the ingredients, the core ingredients, only come from China. He would love to have the manufacturing ability. The big automakers have it, but he doesn't have it because he makes these small batteries, or he gets these small batteries for what he does, having to do with motorcycles and race cars. There are small businesses hurting who do not think that this pain is going to go away anytime soon. Is there any plan for relief for them?
Well, there's an enormous plan right now, and it's in the reconciliation package, Jake. If you look at the fact that we've got expensing for equipment investment in the U.S., we've got expensing for factories that are built in the U.S. It used to be you had to write them off over 39 years. Now you can expense them right away. And so there's never been a bigger stimulus effort to bring jobs and employment home. And I think that the folks that you talk to should look at the tax bill and study it, because there's so much in there for them. And so, yes, there is a plan. There is a plan. That's in addition to making great trade deals. And we've got, UK, we've got China, we've got 24, 25 on tap for the next few weeks. And so we got all these deals coming out that are lowering the rates, giving people the certainty that they want. And we've also got the big, beautiful tax bill coming that's going to be incentive enough for people to onshore more production and more factories. And the fact that you could already see it, like in the State of the Union, you might recall President Trump said that the expensing was going to be retroactive to the 20th of January. And said that's where the 20% boom in the first quarter came. And so the tax cuts are already working, even though they're not in effect yet, because President Trump said they'd be retroactive.
Inflation slowing to its lowest rate in 4 years, even as Americans brace for prices to rise because of President Trump's dramatic global tariffs. Last month, prices went up just 0.2%, according to the Consumer Price Index, and the cost of a carton of eggs actually dropped last month. That is welcome news for the White House and for you. President Trump has been falsely claiming egg prices have been tumbling for months now, but now it's finally accurate. He finally gets to cash in on the reality. Prices did fall 12.7% last month. The trend is expected to continue next month as well. But of course, not all industries are the same, and not all industries are reacting the same way to President Trump's tariffs, which brings us to our series Business Leaders, where we talk with small business owners from coast to coast about how the tariffs have reshaped their operations and affected you, the consumer. Rick Woldenberg joins me now. He's the CEO of Learning Resources. Now, that's a family-owned educational toy store in Vernon Hills, Illinois, a suburb north of Chicago. They're currently suing the Trump administration over the tariff policy. Rick, thanks so much for joining us. So these tariffs have hit a lot of small businesses hard, yours particularly hard. Can you tell us why it was so disruptive that it actually led you to take legal action?
Well, the tariffs that we were hit with at 145% out of China were essentially a ban of importation. We make 60% of our products in China, although we've moved quite a bit out. And so we couldn't stand by. It was putting our business in peril. That's why we decided to sue. We don't believe that he has the authority to impose these tariffs.
So your argument is that the tariffs are unlawful because the president doesn't have the power. It should be the legislative branch?
Right. The Constitution vests the power to tax and to collect taxes in Congress. They also vest in Congress the power to regulate commerce. It can be delegated to the president, but with strings attached. The president has placed a tax on basically everything that comes in the country.
Well, have you had to raise prices for your customers to offset the cost of tariffs?
We've been dragging our heels, but we're in the process of raising prices right now. Since we're a mission-driven business and we make educational products, it's very important to us to make our products as value-priced as possible. Every child has an equal right to education. So we raise our prices very, very, very reluctantly.
So there is this 90-day pause with China where the 145% tariffs are down to 30%. Has that been a relief at all for you to hear?
I don't know if I would describe it as a relief. It's a low enough number that we probably will take advantage of bringing some product in. Nice. We had a lot of inventory at the beginning of the year, and so this will allow us to fill in holes and to bring in products that we really didn't have a backup manufacturing site for. But nevertheless, we pay a 30% penalty, and the only way you would think 30% is small is if you compare it to 145%. Last year, we paid zero.
Have you had to lay off any employees?
No, that's the last on our list. We're doing everything we can to rally around our team. There's 500 families that depend on our company for their livelihood, and they're very, very important to us. So we're doing everything we can to keep the team together.
So President Trump, obviously, in addition to arguing that he wants trade deals to be more equal, he also says he wants to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. Is it possible for a business like yours for manufacturing to be brought to the United States?
Well, based on 10 years of trying to work that out, my answer is no. We've had various incentives over the years to manufacture products in the U.S., and we've come up with exactly zero partners that can help us with that. We do some printing in the U.S. and we do assembly here, but nothing else works. We recently went out and quoted building out a 3D printing farm, and that raised our prices 24x. The item that we quoted out sells for $23, and we'd have to raise the price to $600. There's no business in that.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, Rick Woldenberg.
All right. Everybody's talking about Trump's gift, okay? The large Boeing 747 worth $400 million, okay? worth $400 million. People are saying, why is it taking that much from Qatar?
I'm honest with breaking news about that 747 the Qatari royal family is giving to President Trump, which he will keep, he says, for his library after leaving office. We learned today that it could take 2 years and $750 million or more to bring the plane up to Air Force One standards. Now, that's according to a person familiar with the matter. $750 million or more to take it apart, check for surveillance devices, then refit it with the defenses, communications gear, and all the rest a commander-in-chief needs. In short, all the gear already on the 747 he flew to Saudi Arabia for a day of pomp and ceremony, fighter escort included, and which he'll fly in just a few hours to Qatar for more of the same. His current 747, though, aging, already has all of that, and so will the new 747 Boeing is building, which is years behind schedule, as the president has pointed out, but which the company now says it could deliver in the next 2 years. In other words, about the same delivery time as the one the president says he'd be stupid not to take.
I would never be one to turn down that kind of an offer. I mean, I could be a stupid person, say, no, we don't want a free, very expensive airplane. But I thought it was a great gesture.
Well, that notwithstanding, the gift, which Mr. Trump actually took a tour of back in February, raises ethical, constitutional, foreign policy, and national security concerns, some or all of which a number of Republican lawmakers and other Trump loyalists are speaking about. Here's Senator Mike Rounds, who sits on the Intelligence Committee, comparing the plane to a Trojan horse.
It seems to me that the Greeks actually had something like that happen one time, a long, long time ago, and somebody happened to have brought a golden horse inside of a community. This aircraft is beautiful, and it would be great if we could accept it, but security concerns are also there.
Well, Senator John Cornyn, also on the Intelligence Committee, said off camera, I just know that our adversaries are pretty creative at planting all sorts of listening devices and other sensors, so I'd be very concerned about that. Senator Lisa Murkowski, also off camera, said, when you get something of that value from a country, one typically thinks that there's something in it for the country that is offering it. So I think there's certainly a lot of questions. Senator Rand Paul is opposed on ethical grounds.
There is a provision in the Constitution that says you can't do this. I think it's not worth the appearance of impropriety. Whether it's improper or not, I don't think it's worth it.
Other GOP lawmakers, though, are showing less firmness in their views on the matter. Senator Josh Hawley says he'd prefer a made-in-America plane, which, other than the interior done by a French design firm, it is. Senator Tom Tillis seems to be approaching the question as the management consultant he once was.
And then you got to work through the cost benefit of it, right? I mean, we're in a world of Doge, so we got to figure out whether it's worth upfitting or writing a check, selling it, and writing a check to the Treasury and help us with our debt reduction.
Well, Majority Leader John Thune, on the other hand, would not weigh in at all because it seems it's just not real to him yet.
I don't think there's anything official out there. This is a hypothetical, and I'm sure that if and when there is, it's no longer a hypothetical. I can assure you there will be plenty of scrutiny of whatever that arrangement might look like.
Senator Joni Ernst tried a version of the old I haven't seen the tweet answer, telling CNN's Monterraggio, I haven't heard specifics about the plane. I don't know anything about it. As for Democrats, there's widespread criticism, of course, with Senate Majority Leader Schumer saying he is placing a blanket hold on all Justice Department political nominees until he receives answers on the plane. However, that hold can be overcome by a simple majority, which Republicans now hold. And some Republican lawmakers, such as Montana Congressman and former Trump Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, he's apparently not worried.
Do you have any ethics concerns or constitutional concerns?
Well, I'm glad Pam Bondi stepped in and looked at it from a legal point of view, which is helpful. You know, again, I'll go back. This must be one heck of a plane, because he was on Air Force One. I've been on Air Force One. Right. To me, it's a nice plane. Evidently, remember who President Trump is. He's a billionaire businessman from New York. He doesn't sleep in a sleep bag overnight. You know, he's making deals, and I think it's transactional to him. He looks at it and goes, hey, it's a better airplane. His comment was, you'd be stupid not to take it. I think that's from a business point of view, because he is a business guy. He goes out and, you know, he's making deals everywhere, and he's Mr. Deal Maker.
Well, keeping him honest, you may remember that as Interior Secretary, he was found to have broken ethics rules while in office by the department's Inspector General. The congressman's seal of approval or not, there is criticism as well from some of the president's biggest backers in the right-wing media world.
Taking sacks of goodies from people who support Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, Al Jazeera, all the rest, that's not America first. Like, please define America first in a way that says you should take sacks of cash from the Qatari royals who are behind Al Jazeera. It just isn't America first in any conceivable way. So back to the original question. Is this good for President Trump? Is it good for his agenda? Is it good for draining the swamp and getting things done? The answer is no, it isn't. It isn't. If you want President Trump to succeed, this kind of skeezy stuff needs to stop.
All right, Ben.
Laura Loomer, another fierce Trump loyalist, says she cannot support the president on this, but his staunchest critic might just come from out of the past, namely from Donald Trump. Writing about President Obama in 2012, his tweet reads, "How many illegal foreign donations will Obama collect this final week?" Another scandal ignored by the liberal media. CNN Chief White House correspondent Kaitlan Collins starts us off tonight from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Did the White House, do you think, fully grasp how much controversy over this jet would follow the president on this trip?
No, Anderson, it's not clear that they did, because ever since we started reporting on this over the weekend, as we were talking to officials getting ready to come here to Riyadh, they were defending this move and saying that they had been looking around for a plane. The president had been frustrated by delays by Boeing. And then obviously once the reporting was public that he did plan to accept this plane after touring it earlier this year, that's really when the scrutiny started to come in. But I should note, it's about 3 a.m. here in Riyadh. The president just posted on Truth Social defending taking this plane from the Qataris, saying that only a fool would not take a free plane from them, suggesting that in the end it will actually end up saving American taxpayers money by not paying for the plane. Of course, we do know our reporting has shown that this, even though it will go from the Ministry of Defense here, or the Ministry of Defense in Qatar, to the Pentagon, it's still going to have to be modified to be usable by a president. There's a lot of security modifications that have to go to that, including state-of-the-art communication systems, air-to-air missiles to protect the president and those who are traveling with him. I mean, there's the list goes on, Anderson, of just how much has to go into that. But what we have been hearing from officials behind the scenes is just really simply defending this. None of them that I've been speaking to have backed off this notion of taking this plane or questioned whether or not they should. They seem very intent that this is still the plan that they are going to do. And I think being on the ground here today, and I was at that Saudi investment forum earlier today for about 10 hours where the president was, where he came in with the Saudi crown prince. They were looking at all the investment that the crown prince is making here in Saudi Arabia and what that's going to look like, down to models that he had displayed around the room showing what this was going to look like. Part of it's called Vision 2030 that the Saudi crown prince is trying to implement here, to the tune of a lot of money. You can see why this is what appeals to President Trump. I mean, these are Gulf leaders who know how to speak his language. There's a lot of opulence here. They are flying around in their own massive planes. I mean, we were just looking around in the conference room as it was described earlier today. It does not look like your average conference room. There's these massive chandeliers. It is all an incredibly opulent affair, and you can hear in the president's voice and the way he talks about the Saudi crown prince and their relationship, just how much he appreciates him and what he thinks of him. And it's just such a stark contrast to when we were here 4 or 5 years ago, Anderson, and President Biden's aides were worried whether or not he...
You know why I respect Trump? Because he doesn't care, okay? He does not care. Everybody's saying, well, he's trying to enrich himself. How? This man doesn't even take his salary as a president. Oh, it's corrupt. It's taking planes. Nobody respected American president like this. Do you know the amount of respect you have to have for the office to give a $400 million plane, to gift the $400 million plane? Of course, people are going to complain. What is it? What is in there for the Saudis or for the Qatarian family? Trump doesn't care. He doesn't care, okay? Because this man, he was almost killed, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget, do not forget, he was almost killed. They tried to put this man in jail because they knew he was going to win the election. Nobody said nothing. No liberal said anything about this man going to prison. They said it was corrupt, is this, is that. But now Letitia James is going through allegations. And everybody's saying, well, Trump is revenging. What do you want, actually? What do you guys want? I'd like to know. He's a bad businessman. He has 12 bankruptcies or whatever you want to say. This is the same man with multiple buildings with his name on it. This is the same man that has tens of golf courses around the world. He's not a successful business. What else do you want? You respect Biden that has been taking taxpayers' money for what? 50 years? He made his money as a politician. This man made his money in business. He failed multiple times and he won finally. You don't think that's the American dream? Isn't that what we pray for? To be successful in America? Yes, we're going to fail, but yet we keep going. So because he had bankruptcies, he's supposed to just lay down and die and say, what, I'm a failure? He's not supposed to get up. Just because he lost the election in 2020 doesn't mean he's not going to come back again. That's what they feared. They feared the fact that if this man comes back into power, Americans are going to wake up and realize that, whoa, we could actually live a good life. We could bring back manufacturing jobs. The border could be secured. I still see people saying, well, why is he closing the borders? Go ask Laken Riley's parents. Go ask those folks. They'll probably tell you close and cancel on the border. But there's nothing this man can do that liberals are going to say, you know what? I support him.
He should even shake the Crown Prince's hand after that U.S. intelligence found that he ordered the death of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And so it really just speaks to how the president views this overall. And I think the plane is just part of the lens to that, really, Anderson.
Yeah, Caitlin, thanks very much. A reminder, you can join Caitlin at the top of the hour for The Source. With me now from Capitol Hill is Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton of Massachusetts. He sits on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, you see the plane the president has accepted from Qatar, the business deals his family has made overseas, the crypto ventures, all against this backdrop of the Mideast trip. Is this the purest version of him that we are seeing lately?
It is. I mean, this is just President Trump who thinks he's above the law, doesn't mind violating the law, even the U.S. Constitution. And frankly, I'm sure we're going to see a lot more corruption as this administration takes its course.
The president has pitched this as a free airplane. He doesn't talk about the hundreds of millions it will cost taxpayers to retrofit it if he chooses to do that. They're really, I mean, is there really any such thing as a free gift when it comes to presidents and royal families and jumbo jets?
No, I mean, there's no free gift. It's hard to imagine that the Qataris aren't asking for something in return. And as you pointed out earlier, it's going to take a couple years to tear this plane apart because the Qataris would be crazy not to try to bug every nook and cranny of this thing. So the entire thing will have to be taken apart, reconstructed. That's going to cost a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort that frankly should be just directed to fixing the problems at Boeing and getting the planes that the president ordered back on track.
Tonight, the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, who used to be a constitutional lawyer, said that accepting the plane is not his decision, but he doesn't think it would violate the emoluments clause of the Constitution. Does it give Republican lawmakers some political cover to shrug it off then as not a big deal?
I mean, I've never heard Speaker Johnson agree with anything that Trump does or says, so that doesn't really tell us anything. But I think that most people can see that this clearly violates the Constitution, especially if Trump intends to take it for his own personal use after he...
The fact that, I get it, this is what CNN is supposed to do and say. Of course, you know, when I heard about the $400 million 747 Boeing, in my mind, I'm thinking like, wait, is there a way for them to actually check the entire plane and see if there's no bug or nothing? I guess they're going to do all that stuff. But CNN is not going to tell you, oh, wait, this man, President of the United States, doesn't even take his salary. CNN is never going to come on here and tell you Trump doesn't take his salary. Joe Biden did. And guess what? Well, he doesn't take his salary because he's going to enrich himself with the office. How? This man has been rich his entire life.
he leaves the presidency. I mean, France gave us the Statue of Liberty, but Grover Cleveland didn't take it home with him or put it in his library when he was not president anymore. And yet that's what Trump plans to do with his plane.
Oh, so I see. They want him to take it, but I don't want him to take it. And of course, when he's done, it's going to be commissioned to his Trump library. Of course, he's going to be able to use it from that. But what they're trying to say is, if he takes it, he should give it to, I guess, the White House or the executive power and say, I'm going to give this to the office, not my presidential library. Because he just referenced the Statue of Liberty. Oh, wrong one.
Donald Trump, over the last few days, has touted win after win. He's been doing so many things, and it appears that Congress is sitting at the sideline saying, okay, I guess there's nothing we can do. And that's how the public views Congress right now. What is your response to that, the way that the public is seeing all of this?
That's accurate. That is what the Republican-led Congress is doing, is absolutely nothing. We're legislating on reducing regulations for walk-in refrigerators. That's the kind of stuff that we vote on right now. And actually, I think the public would like us to have a say in tariff policy. I mean, I don't think that Trump gets a lot of credit for cleaning up his own mess. You know, my 4-year-old gets credit if she cleans up her own mess, but the president, not so much. What are we actually getting here? Donald Trump is weak on China, is the bottom line. He's weak on China. He's been weak on China for a long time. And look, I've got no quibble with the Chinese people, but the Chinese Communist Party, yeah. Like, I don't like it when they're stealing our ideas and our businesses. I don't like it when they're trying to start a war over Taiwan. I don't like it when they disappear people who disagree with the regime, although maybe that's where Trump finds some companionship with Xi Jinping, the same way he has a bromance with Vladimir Putin.
Scott, you want to jump in? I see you.
This whole idea that he's weak on China. Did you not read the news about what Secretary Bessent found out in these meetings, that during the Biden administration, the Chinese officials said, yeah, we knew we could ignore Biden. We could ignore whatever agreements we had because he was too weak and would never, ever stand up to us or stop us. Now they've been drugged to the table by a strong American president. And for all the talk from China, from Beijing, oh, we're going to outlast the Americans. We're fortified to outlast the Americans. A few days into this, they're in Switzerland, cutting the beginnings of a deal that's going to be good for the United States, admitting some of the things that they have to admit in order to get a more balanced situation with us. This is a total win for the president, and it's a total win for the rock star Scott Bessent, who goes overseas and pulls an amazing rabbit out of a hat. But do not forget, they told him we ignored Biden because he was so weak and we could afford to do it.
You know you're losing when you have to bring Joe Biden into the narrative.
I didn't say it. The Chinese did.
No,
they are losing. I agree with you. The Chinese are losing.
The reality
they brought it up.
No, the reality is when you have to make your point,
they brought it up.
Refer it back to Joe Biden.
It's not me. It's
what
them.
is happening is not working in your favor.
Nah.
I'll actually want, because you're the expert on this, but I'll say what I have to say after.
All right. I want to quickly ask you just a question about this, because normally if Donald Trump would have started with, we're going to put a 30% tariff on China, the markets would likely have freaked out.
Cataclysmic.
Correct? But now their response is, oh, this is way better than the 145 and the back and forth, and we're not sure exactly what's going to happen, but it looks like things are moving. What do you make of this?
So let's just start with some numbers about where we are today relative to where we were on Friday. So today we have effective tariff rates in this country. The budget lab at Yale that I ran the numbers of 17% inclusive of this deal. When President Trump took office in January, effective tariff rates were 2.5%. Kevin's right. These are consumption taxes. They're going to be borne by low and middle income people who are going to see prices increase by on average $2,800 price increase.
If you notice, they've been saying prices will go up. It ain't gone up yet. Prices will go up. This guy is destroying the country. Look at us. We have no friends. Yet, he's getting planes. Okay. Yet, people are gifting the United States a 747 Boeing plane. We have no friends. The shelves are going to be empty. Yet, no empty shelves. Prices are going to go up. Prices are going down. What else do you want? What else do y'all want? You want this man to fail so bad, like you're not an American, like you don't live in the United States. Oh, Trump is this. Why do you pray for this guy to fail? Why? Man.
For a family as a result of these tariffs that are in place. And 30% tariffs on China are lower than 145%, but they are still extremely, extremely high. And they are high on literally everything that the American people buy. So I think that if this is the framework for how we expect these trade deals to go going forward, I think we're in a place where things aren't actually going that well from the perspective of a trade war that we've launched. Though I want to agree with Scott, I think we actually have to give Secretary Bessent a fair bit of credit because he understood that we were in a position that was fundamentally untenable, and he started the process of trying to retreat. But it's a mistake to say that the administration has gotten anything from that retreat. I mean, a lot of what you said, Kevin, you said rumors and innuendo. I haven't heard anything about IP or anything about access to courts as a result of this deal.
I also remember being at this table and saying we have to stick it to China because they're our greatest national security threat. And I don't see how this deal actually plays into our favor in protecting our country anymore. The bottom line is that the tariffs were rolled out. They should have been rolled out better. This is not the first pause. The reason why it's pausing is because the headlines were not working in Donald Trump's favor. We have reporting from inside White House staff saying this to reporters.
Nobody cares.
That he did not like the
Nobody cares. America cares, okay? America cares. And guess what? The ships are coming from China now. Okay? Deals are going to happen. Whatever y'all say, you could never say, you know what? I commend Trump. Nothing he does. And this is why, like, I could never tell you Joe Biden, everything Joe did was wrong. I could never tell you that. Probably have to go research the good things Joe Biden did. But what I don't understand about the liberals is every single thing Donald Trump does is bad. How? No one thing good that he did. That's how you know people are just haters, bad actors, and not genuine. Because why would you say every single thing that Donald Trump has done? This man was the president from 2016 to what? To 2021 or 2020. So it's like everything he did from 2016 during his first term was all bad. What about the First Step Act? The Abrams Accord. Opportunity zones. Those were during the first term. Now, yesterday, he signed the low price executive deal for pharmaceuticals. Still, liberals are going to say, well, he's selfish. He's trying to enrich his family with the executive order. Nothing he does is good. That's why I could never take liberals serious, because if you want to come to the table with an argument, you better tell me at least one thing Trump did that is good. If you cannot tell me that, then I just know you're a hater. You're just hating for nothing.
Food on shelves, and people didn't like just being able to buy $2 if they wanted to buy 10, and so he needed to do something. So call it a win if you want, but the cost of living for Americans is still going to go up.
Don't take my word for it. Don't take Mr. Wonderful's word for it. Take the market's word for it today. They know it's a win. They know we're in a better position. They know we're in a better position.
It only had to do that, and it only rebounded because for the last, so many days since April 2nd, it's been in total instability because of
We're ahead
Donald
of where
Trump.
we were. We're ahead of where we were on April 2nd.
The market is in a worse place today. That chart is very helpful. The market is in a worse place today than it was on Inauguration Day. So the market...
So you're going to pick a date. Where were we on April 2nd? And what was it year over year?
When the market responds positively, it's always when the administration moves away from the Trump administration's focus on protectionism. That's exactly when the market reacts positively.
Well,
and that's what we
expect. What you're not liking is you don't like watching sausage being made, because this administration does something that none other has. Make it all open, make it all transparent. There's going to be volatility, which, by the way, has ended up being an incredible buying opportunity. Just when you're in the guts and concerned about how bad it's going to get, had you bought the market at the dip, you've had a phenomenal year. The point is, you can't just look at it by the hour. You got to wait for.
When people come on my page and say, well, he's going to take your citizenship, I was invited to the White House for Easter egg roll. What are you talking about? I am illegal. Okay, a legal migrant. Well, I'm not a legal migrant anymore because I'm a citizen of the United States. But I'm just saying, it took me, 5-6 years to become a United States citizen. And listen to this. I was invited to the White House. And the proof is in the post on my channel. Go see the pictures of me and my daughter, my gorgeous, absolute beautiful daughter, and her grandma at the White House. At the White House, ladies and gentlemen. I wasn't deported. We had Secret Service laughing, smiling, enjoying cakes and eggs and just living, enjoying life. Why do y'all want to just... Democrats, liberals are just pessimists. They're never optimistic about nothing. Everything is doom and gloom. The sky is falling. There's never good news with them. So that's why I'm never a Democrat.
The outcome. Now, Trump is unusual. And look, what I've learned is don't look at the noise. My goodness, you can't deal with Trump's noise. Look at the signal. What's he trying to do? Reset world order on trade. VAT taxes work in almost every economy on earth, between 7 and 14%, including all the European countries and Canada. And this is a consumption tax that we can't put through here a popular basis at all. It's coming in the form of tariffs, and I think it's going to...
Hold on, let me get Congressman Moulton in here, because I do want to talk to you about the numbers you just heard from the Yale Budget Lab. If Americans voted in Donald Trump because they wanted their prices to be lowered, and the prices are what the Budget Lab came up with, which is about $22,000+ a month or a year more that they would have to pay.
Look,
is this worth it?
They're not there yet, but they're going up. And I just want to agree with Kevin. I think that if you bought the dip, it's great. I agree with you. You know, it's great that the stock market rallied. But I thought this was about working people. Mm-hmm. I thought this was about lowering prices. I have a Marine buddy of mine I served with, who's a hedge fund manager, and he loves this right now. He loves the volatility. He's making a lot of money off of it. I haven't seen any jobs come back to American factories. I haven't seen prices improve for American families. I think it's going in the opposite direction for the people who Trump says he's
most
supposed
people
to
don't
help.
have money to buy. The dip is so most folks that are in the dip, when it goes lower, they just lose more money. They don't have the disposable income.
Sorry.
And I don't mind watching the sausage being made. I just want to make sure there's sausage at the end and that I can actually afford it.
For real? I didn't know that. I didn't know you were waiting for the sausage. All right, here we go. For the leaves, all right? Joe Biden's health condition. Here we go.
President Biden's closest advisors privately discussed the possibility that he may need to use a wheelchair if he won re-election because his physical health had deteriorated so much. That scoop out this morning from Axios. It's one of the...
What? Oh, man, it's over. Democrats, I'm sorry, man, it's over. Listen to that.
President Biden's closest advisors privately discussed the possibility that he may need to use a wheelchair if he won re-election because his physical health had deteriorated so much. That scoop out this morning from Axios. It's one of the many details in the soon-to-be-released new book titled Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. It was written by Axios' Alex Thompson and CNN's own Jake Tapper. Jake is here to join us now. I'm curious about what his advisors were saying at the time as you look at this, as you reported out this book.
So the White House physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, was telling White House aides that President Biden's deterioration of his spine, the degeneration, was so significant that if he fell one more time, that he might have to be in a wheelchair and serve in a wheelchair for his second.
Oh my goodness. I'm glad this is coming from CNN that said, you know, he's ready to go for a second term. This is the greatest, most consequential president we've had alongside Kamala Harris. I'm glad they're saying this. Oh, man.
Second term. But everybody pushed off the notion that he used a wheelchair until after the election. This is all part of a larger whole where the Biden White House tried to hide the extent of his deterioration, both physical and cognitive, as much as possible. In fact, as we all saw, as his shuffling gait got worse and worse from 2003.
What? Really? You saw that it got worse and worse, CNN? Please come tell the liberals in my chat. Please.
To 2004, they started putting aids around him as he walked to Marine One, the helicopter. That was to kind of hide from public view how bad his gait was, how bad his walking was, his shuffling, and also in case he stumbled again to make sure somebody was there. And this is just of a piece of an overall campaign to try to conceal from the American people the extent to which the president was really struggling to do his job.
You have an entire White House press corps, though, following him around. And I'm just curious as to whether or not this kind of trying to hide what was happening with the president at the time had an impact on the press corps. Like, why didn't we hear some of these details from what they actually saw and were dealing with trying to get information?
Well, Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters, trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet. They were lying to White House staffers. They were lying to Democratic members of Congress, to donors about how bad things had gotten. And in fact, Alex and I started writing this book after the election of 2024. And we spoke with more than 200 people, most of whom, almost all of whom, were Democrats, and almost all of whom wouldn't be honest with us or wouldn't be candid with us until after the election. And then after the election, we found out all of these things that when you looked at what was going on with President Biden at the time, it probably doesn't surprise you the extent to which he was deteriorating. But now we have anecdotes and facts about what was really going on behind the scenes with details that Democrats wouldn't share with us until after Election Day.
Are you hearing anything from President Biden himself about any of this? Is he responding to any of this?
So he was on The View last week. And Alyssa Farah Griffin, one of our commentators and also obviously a host there, asked him about our book. Specifically, she said to us later it was about our book, about the fact that sources were saying these things about him behind closed doors, and are they wrong? And the president said they were wrong, but he doesn't obviously know what's in the book as of now. His spokesman, who wouldn't go on the record, told Axios in the excerpt that Alex and Axios published this morning that nobody can point to any result of this alleged deterioration that meant a decision was bad or any impact on the country, to which I just say, stay tuned. We got a lot more coming out, including on The Lead today at 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll have more from Original Sin.
The behind-the-scenes details of how President Biden's closest aides privately discussed putting him into a wheelchair if he had won re-election. This new reporting out today in Axios and coming from the new book by CNN's Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson of Axios. The book is called Original Sin: President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. The author's writing this in part: Biden's physical deterioration, most apparent in his halting walk, had become so severe that there were internal discussions about putting the president in a wheelchair. Joining me right now is CNN political analyst and Axios national politics correspondent, one of the authors behind this big book, Alex Thompson. It's good to see you, Alex. Thanks for coming in. Tell us more about what you've learned around this, I'll call it an episode, and what the discussions were that you learned about inside his team.
Yes, they basically were terrified that Biden was going to have to be in a wheelchair before the election. And that's why you saw, especially after he had that bad stumble in the summer of 2023, why you saw them take a lot of steps to make sure that he did not fall again. You saw him with, the tennis shoes. You saw the shorter stairs. Privately, they wanted more handrails to make sure anytime he was on steps that he could do it. There were shorter walkways and shorter paths in order to get from A to B behind the scenes. This was something they were incredibly concerned about. And they also determined that he may even need a wheelchair anyway, even if he didn't have a bad fall. But they were determined to make sure that it would only happen in the second term.
I know that you've seen this, but for our viewers, in response to your reporting, a spokesperson for Biden responded in part saying, yes, there were physical changes as he got older, but evidence of aging is not evidence of mental incapacity. What did you hear from the people you talked to?
I'd say a lot of the people behind the scenes disagree with that statement. And you're going to see more reporting in this book today and tomorrow. And then when it comes out next week, that will be more about, sort of the mental decline. But in this case, this was about his physical decline and how much the toll of the presidency was taking on him. President Biden's doctor would privately quip to people that Biden's political aides were trying to kill him while he was trying to keep him alive.
Last week, President Biden and Jill Biden, they were on The View, and our colleague Alyssa Farah-Griffin, she asked about your book and about some of your reporting. Let me play this.
What is your response to these allegations, or are these sources wrong?
They are wrong. There's nothing to sustain that, number one.
Well, and Alyssa, one of the things I think is that the people who wrote those books were not in the White House with us. And they didn't see how hard Joe worked every single day.
That's why he's working hard. That's why he needs you to tell the world about it, not himself. All right? He was working hard only from Jill. All right? Only Jill tells us, not Joe Biden himself.
They are wrong. There's nothing to sustain that, number one.
He can't even look up. Don't forget, this was the vice president of the United States for 8 years and the president of the United States for 4. He can't even look up at the camera. That's how bad he feels. Now, I get it. When you get older, you can't do some things. I get it. Just let it go. Let it go. You don't have to be in politics anymore if you know your body cannot take it. He couldn't even look up. He couldn't even look at a camera. He was ashamed. I get it. I mean, I hope I live long to be, Joe Biden's age, because everybody's just falling and, disappearing in this world. Who knows what's going on? But I mean, if you're getting too old, just let it go. Couldn't even look at a camera. Jill had to support him.
There's nothing to sustain that.
Oh, man.
Number one.
Well, and Alyssa, one of the things I think is that the people who wrote those books were not in the White House with us. And they didn't see how hard Joe worked every single day.
But Alex, talk about what do you do with that, and also about how many people you and Jake spoke with for your reporting to source this book.
We spoke to over 200 people, almost all of them after the election, and almost all of them Democrats as well, because I think members of the party, members of the administration, senior White House officials were sort of reckoning with how Trump won and what the role of Joe Biden running for re-election was in that. And I have no doubt that the former president and the former first lady do truly believe what they said in that clip. The fact is that a lot of people that worked in the White House with them just don't agree and told us so. And that's what this book is based on, and that's what the conclusions of this book are based on.
Oh, and much more to come, as you're saying, Alex. Thank you so much. Look forward to learning more.
And Kamala Harris said, so she was lying. Is LB on this chat? LB Things, are you on this chat? Oh, she didn't run away. There we go. LB Things. Okay, this is for you. So you mean Kamala Harris was lying about Joe Biden because she said Joe Biden was fit, ready to go. So you wanted to vote for a liar. Actually, you voted for a liar.
I want to start with this hold that you've put on these nominees, because, of course, Democrats have been pushing you and the colleagues of yours that you lead to do more to oppose President Trump. Is that what this is?
No, this is an issue of outright bribery and a serious issue of national security as well. To let any foreign country donate, quote unquote, a 747 that is the presidential plane, Air Force One. That's the most sophisticated plane in the world, more than any other plane. And there are huge security issues if someone else donates it. In fact, if this happens, and I pray to God that it doesn't because it's such a security risk, they'd have to take apart the entire plane down to the screws and nuts and bolts and see if any listening devices were implanted in it. So it's a huge national security issue. It's an issue of bribery. This is probably the biggest, I'm certain, it's the biggest gift, quote unquote, that has ever been given to a sitting president. And as your person said there, not only is there no free lunch, there's no free Air Force One.
I think I was saying it was my mother who frequently told me that.
Well, I'm glad to quote
no
your mother, Casey. She's a very wise woman.
Thank you very much, Senator. So bottom line here, though, it doesn't seem like anybody could actually stop this from happening. Is there anything you can do to stop it?
Well, you've heard even on your show, there are a whole lot of Republicans who are worried here. I hope they're worried about the bribery issue and the relationship that Trump has. You know, there's something called FARA, Foreign Agents Registration Act, that already this Justice Department has weakened. Who are the other Qatari agents here? What relationships have they had? What offers have they made to Donald Trump, to members of his family, to members of his administration? So there are so many issues here that I hope, we've already heard some Republican congressional people talk about how bad this is, and I hope there are some serious people within the administration who take our national security seriously who will tell Trump he can't do this. But it's outrageous. And by putting a hold, Casey, we'll be able to debate it, we'll be able to vote on these nominees, and I think the more sunlight that's brought to this issue, they didn't want to make it public, the greater the public outcry there will be, and hopefully that will persuade this administration to not do this, not only dumb idea, but dangerous, dangerous idea.
Senator, I want to ask you also about what's been going on in the Democratic Party. You, of course, have come in for no small amount of criticism from members of your own party. I'm going to speak later in the hour with Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who's talked about do-nothing Democrats, politicians, pundits. Do you think that he was including you in that criticism, and is there any validity to it?
All I know is that Democrats in the House and the Senate are fighting this new reconciliation bill tooth and nail. It's the largest Medicaid cut in history. If it happens, 14 million people will lose their health care between this and ACA. Many more will pay, their premiums will go through the roof. Rural hospitals, local hospitals will close. Many, many will be thrown out of work, and many, many more will not get health care. So we are together. We're on our front foot. We're fighting very hard on this issue, and that's why the Republicans are having such trouble putting their reconciliation bill together. We're fighting on this. We're fighting on Social Security. And then finally, when you realize they're cutting Medicaid, cutting health care, going after Social Security, all for tax breaks for the billionaires,
she knows a bunch of caps.
And the public is on our side on this issue.
I do hear the Democratic messaging that you always say that the Republic is on the side for. Sir, I really do want to ask you about something that has been breaking out of CNN. Our Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson have written a book called Original Sin, and they call it a cover-up of Biden's health and his cognition and his fitness, quite frankly, to be president of the United States. You sat next to Biden in the Oval Office, February 27th, 2024, just a handful of months before the president took that debate stage. And it was later reported that you and other Democratic leaders were talking before the debate about having a plan. You and Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama. I understand you later denied that ever happened. But I am curious, I'm interested to know whether the man that you saw sitting there on that couch on that day, you were in there, you saw him up close and personal. Did you really not have any idea that he was not fit to serve a second term?
Casey, we're looking forward. We have the largest Medicaid cut in front of us.
Okay, we're looking forward.
We're
looking forward, ladies and gentlemen.
Presidential election. And is that not Joe?
We're looking forward, ladies and gentlemen. Let's forget about the former president that was falling upstairs, okay?
Biden's responsibility for deciding to run again.
We're looking forward.
That's it?
That's it.
All right. Senator Chuck Schumer, I know you got to go. I appreciate your time today. We'll see you soon, I hope. Thank you.
Take care.
All right. And our panel joins us now. CNN political commentator Jonah Goldberg, the host of the Chuck Toddcast, Chuck Todd, Democratic strategist Paul Begala, Republican pollster Kristen Soltis Anderson, both CNN political commentators. Chuck Todd, go.
He is among the people that are responsible for this. The leaders of the Democratic Party, the staff of the White House. And I have to say, I find everybody now talking to these authors, get out of here. Go home. You're part of the problem. Now you tell us? So I find, the reason why the Democratic Party has less credibility today. Here's an unpopular president, and the Democratic Party has a worse rating than the Republican Party with this catastrophic governance that we've seen over the last 120 days. And yet, why is the Democratic Party in worse shape? Because of this distrust, because of this, frankly, what the public feels as if the party leadership let them down and let this happen. He's as responsible as anybody else. He was a leader in the party. He could have said something sooner, and he didn't.
I don't know. I thought Chuck Schumer was a voice of youthful vigor and energy, who brought a new perspective to politics. No, look, I think there are a lot of journalists, Alex Thompson and our colleague Jake Tapper, contrary to a lot of stuff you see on Twitter, we're actually pressing on this stuff very early on. But there is a problem with sort of just saying, oh, the Democratic leadership is responsible for this. There was a lot of pushback in a lot of the media also saying, why are you
There's difference in media, though. Joe Scarborough is not a journalist. He is a defender.
Fair.
Right? Pundits were defending because they didn't want to lose their access.
Yeah.
Okay, to the White House. Journalists were getting essentially stonewalled.
Yeah, no, look,
so the actual journalists who are doing the work. So that's where I want to draw a line, because I do sort of resent this idea that somehow it's the media's fault that Joe Biden ran for president. Ultimately, it is Joe Biden, the West Wing, and the Democratic Party who created this disaster.
That's all fine, and I'm happy to concede it's more complicated and nuanced than a lot of people want to make it out to be. It's also just worth pointing out, like, this was not, and Kristen can speak to this better than I can, this was not a secret to the American people. It was coming up in polling.
People can see with their own
for a year. Everyone has someone in their family who struggled with age or infirmity. They saw it.
It's not about the number. It's about where you are as a person.
Yeah, and so, like, there's this weird sort of like wagon circling that I think is just very weird going on.
And I remember the day after the debate, a lot of the talk was, well, was this just a bad night, or was this Joe Biden's in trouble? And there, even after that debate, was this real attempt to say, well, it was just a bad night. Well, it was just a bad night. Where poll after poll after poll that I was seeing was saying, America is screaming, this is not just a bad night. This is exactly who we worried that he was.
Paul Begala, our viewers know you so well, and they know that you have been in these rooms where it's just you and the candidate and probably members of the family, right? And decisions like one to run or not, they are incredibly personal. There is an incredible amount of pressure to protect the principal, to protect the family. I am really interested in your sort of understanding of how the personal dynamics drove what happened here, because Biden himself was so motivated to beat Donald Trump. He really was convicted he was the only one who could. And in the reality, what ended up being that he was the one that was going to lose the worst to him, even though he's still not convinced of that to this day.
Right, that was the only vote. First off, I'm looking forward. Looking forward to reading Jake's book, because I want to know what the hell happened. I want accountability, and I appreciate what Chuck says. I kind of feel that way, but it's not really accurate. Okay, it's Joe Biden's decision alone. You know what worked to get Joe Biden out of the race before that debate? Nothing. Okay, my partner James Carville every day was on TV screaming. Our colleague David Axelrod every day on TV saying Biden was too old. You know what effect that had? Nothing. That, God bless him, that Irishman just dug his heels in.
Why didn't anybody run against him, though?
In all of American history.
I mean, Dean Phillips did. I went to New Hampshire with Dean Phillips.
In all of American history, you know how many people defeated an incumbent president in their own party? None. Teddy Roosevelt, the greatest politician who ever lived, tried to do that, and he'd already been president.
Well, they drove LBJ out of the race.
They drove out his one. They drove Joe Biden out. They didn't defeat him. Running against him wasn't going to work. Punditing wasn't going to work. I love Joe Biden. This is entirely his decision. And I don't, people trying to blame like the first lady or pundits or
So
something.
you blame Biden at the end of the day?
Yes, and it was a catastrophe. I think he did great things as president, really great things, historically great things. But the choice to run again for the exact reason I suspect, I didn't talk to him, I think you're exactly right. I think he fell for the kind of president-itis that he thought, de Gaulle said the graveyards are filled with indispensable men. And he thought he should have looked at Nancy Pelosi. I think the greatest speaker in American history. She handed off the gavel. A new generation took over. The earth turned on its axis. The Democrats did just fine.
And now they're not speaking to each other.
It's a tragedy. Nancy was...
Yeah, people are going to blame, well, Biden's definitely blame Nancy Pelosi. And a lot of Democrats, too, in some way, shape, or form. They blame Nancy Pelosi for, making sure he got, some people would say, kicked out. But it's like this saying, from fry pan to fire. That's what happened with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. All right, back to Saudi Arabia with the OG.
Donald Trump welcomed by the to the royal court by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He'll later head to Qatar and then on to my home base, the UAE, later this week. Well, here CEOs from virtually every major US company, including Elon Musk, are present as the White House eyes foreign investment and other business opportunities. This hour, they are attending an investment forum where the two leaders are expected to speak and to sign agreements. Well, outside of these meetings today, elsewhere in this region, the war in Gaza drags on with more death and more suffering. Israel's blockade of humanitarian aid now in its third month. Well, we've got a lot to unpack here. Let's start by our senior White House reporter, Betsy Klein. It's good to have you here in region. Thank you. The Saudi perspective on this trip, laid out by the Saudi ambassador to the US, is the following, and I quote her from an op-ed earlier today in the Washington Times. Quote, "In the kingdom, we believe that a sustainable partnership begins with reciprocity." She talks about the importance of this relationship being mutually beneficial. I know from the US perspective, this is primarily about getting deals done. Saudis want slightly more than that, it has to be said.
That's absolutely right. I mean, for President Trump, this is about establishing himself as a deal maker and somebody who can get a win on the global stage, particularly after all that damage that we've seen from his so-called Liberation Day, imposing significant tariffs across the board on China and every other country. We saw all of that pomp and circumstance and pageantry. The president, of course, a reality TV star, he is acutely aware of what the imagery looks like. He got that 21-gun salute, Arabian horses. He walked a royal purple carpet with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. His hosts have really provided the president this very warm hospitality, a warm welcome, and imagery that is sure to please the president. But, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, he has worked very hard to cultivate these ties with the Trump administration. His country was essentially isolated after the 2018 killing of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and he's worked very hard to sort of rebuild and repair his standing on the world stage. Trump is an important part of that.
Now, I'll give you some observations here as far as atmosphere is concerned, because I was at the lunch just earlier, the official welcoming lunch. The entire Saudi cabinet was there. I mean, those who power the engine of this economy and society there alongside the Crown Prince. And many of the US cabinet were there, a plethora of CEOs, both from the US and indeed significant business partners here as well. And I have to say that the atmosphere between Mohammed bin Salman and the US president was extremely cordial, as it was between many of the Saudi princes and cabinet members and the other members of the Trump administration who were here, Howard Lutnick, Pete Hegseth, Rubio, Scott Bessent. So atmospherically, as we move into what is going to be a very busy 24 hours, it looks like there is some warmth, some certain warmth amongst these two administrations.
Yeah, that's my precedent right there. Walking, okay? Agile. That is the precedent that I voted for.
Question is, what will success look like for the US at the back end of this trip?
Man, I'm proud of
And
this
conversely, to a degree, what will success look like for the Saudis?
Well, I think to your point, I mean, the president really wants to show that he is able to get some major Saudi investments in the United States, as well as from Qatar and the UAE when he goes there later this week. And I think for him, it's really all about showing that he can make deals, showing that he has these relationships. These are not traditional U.S. allies, and the president has really reimagined the role of the U.S. in the world and really has, I think the point of his trip being to Saudi Arabia as his first stop, the first major international trip, shows that he is putting outsized importance on these countries as alliances, and in a way that is so different from so many of his predecessors. This is also a trip that echoed that trip he took in 2017, the first trip of his first administration to Saudi Arabia. Of course, notably, Israel is not on the list of stops this trip, and that really underscores how much the geopolitical situation has changed.
The kingdom is very keen, astutely aware that this administration will see a very different Saudi from that which they saw back in 2017. This is a place, frankly, transformed, both so far as society and the economy is concerned. But you're right to point out that Trump's America First policies, he sees huge advantage from what is the sovereign cash from these countries of the Gulf. But I can tell you, just talking to sources here, this is not a blank check, certainly not from Saudi Arabia on this occasion, nor from Qatar, nor the UAE. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this. I'm told that something like 100 deals will be cut at this investment forum. There may be a lot of window dressing in that. Let's be quite clear about that. Some of those deals will be MOUs. They won't all necessarily be hard agreements. Some of them will be agreements to agree, as it were. Yeah. But certainly it's good to have you here, and we will continue to monitor what is, a very pivotal moment, I think, in U.S. Gulf relations in what is a new era for this region.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, several Trump administration officials say the U.S. president's top priority is obtaining economic agreements. He's set to speak at the Saudi-U.S. Investment Forum here in Riyadh in about an hour's time. Let's stay on this with Mohammed Soliman. He's a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute. With both leaders under pressure to deliver at home, just how crucial is this trip, and are these deals, as it were, that are expected to be signed?
Great to be back with you, Becky. The Gulf countries, and specifically Saudi Arabia, are in a very unique position when it comes to the global economic situation. The region is the new Europe in the mindset of President Trump, meaning this is a region of growth, a region that has the financial clout to be able to invest massively in major priority areas. And clearly he sees this region as a big priority area for his own economic agenda when it comes to securing deals for his own for American companies that want to make sure that they have access to overseas markets that's high growth, very relevant, that could act as a force multiplier for American companies in third market opportunities.
Trump wants to showcase massive Saudi investment into the US, while MBS seeking American backing for what is this ambitious vision. We were just discussing my observations of what was very cordial relations. I mean, the lunch ahead of this investment forum this afternoon that I attended just earlier on with about 250 people. Extremely pleasant atmosphere, I have to say, particularly for those who've just got off AF1, which is a long trip. Here, the president stood for an hour greeting people in a line.
Did you guys hear that? Did you guys hear that? The president stood for an hour greeting people. Yeah, that's my president. That's the president I voted for. I'll tell you that much. I'll tell you that much. President who is actually a president. A president who puts his people first.
Which I have to say I thought was quite impressive. But now they're here.
Quite impressive.
What risks, if either side fails to really nail this relationship, to ensure that this relationship delivers on a sort of national security basis for both sides?
I'll be quite frank here. I think the U.S.-Saudi relationship are anchored in two leaders that have respect for each other. I think the personal relationship is the main anchor here. And I think anything they're able to secure on this trip is going to be upside when it comes to MOUs. The biggest challenge in any trip, let's be frank here, is how can you make those MOUs reality? How can you transform those MOUs on actual brick and mortar investment, that you have a factory, you have a holding company that's able to act on the MOU. That's always a challenge that we see. But it's very clear to me from the names that we have been seeing in the US-Saudi Investment Forum that there's a level of seriousness in terms of who is speaking, what they're speaking about. Clearly, there's almost like a roadmap for how US-Saudi relationship will go from here.
We've spoken before, and you and I have discussed the importance of geotech in what is a new world of international affairs, the sort of paradigm shifting. We still talk geopolitics, we still talk geoeconomics, and we should talk about that in the context of this trip for Donald Trump. But geotech really sits at the heart of Donald Trump's foreign policy, it seems, and at the heart of these burgeoning, emerging economies. Just explain, if you will, briefly.
Let me start with this. When President Trump came to office first time in 2017, he broke with the traditional consensus around China policy and the traditional consensus around technologies. Meaning, when he came to power in 2017, we started seeing a major rethinking around how we should think about Chinese equipment in 5G networks, in cloud regions, and we have seen U.S. pressure through what we call the Clean Network Initiative to push allies and partners away from Chinese hardware. So his team was the first to be able to pressure allies and partners, make the question of Chinese tech a major pillar of dialogues and bilateral agreements. And Biden team built on that, and he's now back to power, and his team is very much focused on the question of how the United States can win the AI race.
All right. What do you guys think about the Saudi trip from the OG? And this is tennis. I'm trying to put my daughter in tennis. She's in gymnastics right now. Oh, okay, here we go. Okay, here we go.
So let's check in with Lucas Tomlinson. He's live in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia with more on the president's historic trip. Hey, Lucas.
Well, good morning, Ainsley, from Riyadh, where President Trump has arrived just in the last few hours. We're seeing these historic images from the Saudi royal court. President Trump meeting dignitaries alongside Mohammed bin Salman. And can't help but just to compare this to former President Joe Biden's visit to the region back in 2022. You can see that the Crown Prince is not only alongside President Trump, he greeted him right off Air Force One. Again, that's very different from when Biden visited here just a few years ago. Biden did the historic fist bump. That was not at the airport. And there's no question President Trump arrives here with some headwinds. Idan Alexander, the last living American hostage freed from Gaza, a deal with China, a stock market rally, Steve Witkoff meeting with Iranian officials in neighboring Oman, making progress on the nuclear deal. It is notable that the Iranian foreign minister actually came here to Saudi Arabia over the weekend. A few years ago, there was a little bit of a rapprochement with Saudi Arabia and Iran, brokered by the Chinese. And people are wondering why President Trump has made this his first stop. This is an important relationship. Saudi Arabia is about the size of Western Europe. It's a top 20 economy. If the United States isn't here, officials say the Chinese will be here. That's why President Trump is here. That's why he's greeting all these dignitaries. And the pomp and circumstance has been incredible. There was F-15 fighter escort from the Saudi Air Force for Air Force One. Again, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, greeted President Trump off the aircraft on the ramp. And you've seen all the Trump officials are here, too. There's going to be major investments announced, over $1 trillion in investments from all three countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates. And keep in mind, guys, when President Trump first returned to the White House in January, who was his first call to? Which foreign foreign leader, it was to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Again, just talking about the importance of this relationship, why it's important that President Trump arrived here on his first official overseas visit here to Saudi Arabia, just like he did during his first term. And there could be other meetings as well. There's a lot happening, of course, in the region, not just in Gaza, but in Syria. There's a new Sunni leader in Syria, and there's a lot of calls from former intelligence officials who say the United States should relax sanctions on Syria. Why? To keep Iran out of the country. For years under the Assad regime, Iran used Syria as a forward operating base. So this is going to be very busy. Now back here live to the Saudi royal court, you see President Trump meeting all the dignitaries, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, here the de facto ruler of the country, meeting, standing alongside the president, taking time, these historic images. There's no question that the United States and the White House want to show Saudi Arabia the importance of this relationship. Remember Bret Baier's interview with the Crown Prince? We said, how close are you to normalizing relations with Israel? He said, we get closer every day. Of course, as Brian mentioned, that was before the October 7th massacre, but there's no question President Trump is here to be a leader in the world, but also to elevate the Saudi Crown Prince and Saudi Arabia and talk about the importance of this important relationship, guys.
So, Lucas, the big story after 9/11, which you know intimately well, it's part of you have the military background, was if you're ever going to get terror out of the Middle East, it's got to start with the Wahhabism that's being taught in schools in Saudi Arabia. What type of progress has been made?
Brian, it's been interesting on the ground the last few days here in Riyadh. Admittedly, I came here not expecting to look many women in the eye, to speak to many of them. Instead, what I've been told here in just engaging conversation, things have changed a lot in the last 5 years. Some of the women have no problem speaking with you, being professional, courteous. Not all of them wear the full abaya, full covering with just their eyes showing. A little more, people, more Western look is being adopted here. Last night, strolling around the streets of Riyadh, the coffee shops were open. Of course, no alcohol served here in Saudi Arabia. The coffee shops, bakeries open, men and women sitting together. I spoke to a worker at the hotel who said 5 years ago, he's from Kenya, he said he would only go to work, go home, eat, sleep, and come back. Now he says he's free to walk around the streets of Riyadh, to talk to people. There's no question there's been a cultural opening, if you will, more Western. We've seen that with Saudi Arabia getting involved in the sports, not only the soccer, the football programs here in Saudi Arabia, but of course the Live Golf Tour. Brian, as you were just reporting from Live Doral in Miami, Trump Doral in Miami, Saudi Arabia wants to be a player on the world stage. Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, wants to be a player. They're investing over $600 billion into the United States. They're investing billions of dollars into the U.S. This morning, I bumped into a McKinsey consultant from France who said that one of the reasons they're there to help Saudi Arabia build. We saw it in Bret Baier's reporting last night all over Riyadh, just the hundreds of billions of dollars that has gone into building up the economy here, making it more Western, being open to the West. And that's why President Trump is here, and his team is to solidify that, because if the United States isn't here, others will be. The Chinese, the Russians, and Ainsley, you mentioned Saudi Arabia's nuclear program. That's a sore subject with the Iranians, because the Saudis have threatened that if Iran is allowed to build nuclear reactors, so will they. But it does look like Saudi's moving forward those nuclear reactors, and the Crown Prince is going to want U.S. help and U.S. businesses to do that. Of course, the United States is a leader in nuclear power and nuclear energy.
Could there be a compromise when it comes to nuclear power? Could they allow the enrichment, the United States, under our supervision, and what would that look like?
It's certainly a possibility, Ainsley, and even Iran has dangled that out to the Trump administration and the Western companies, that if they do have the right to enrich. Now, granted, that is not the Trump policy right that we heard from Senator Cotton. We've heard from top Trump officials they don't have the right to enrich. But however, if that enrichment could take place outside the country, which is what happens with many other nuclear powers, perhaps there's room to negotiate there with Iran to be able to build nuclear reactors, bring in that enriched uranium, don't spin those tubes there in Iran, and perhaps the same thing here in Saudi Arabia. While it's an oil-rich country, produces 17% of the world's oil, no question they're looking for alternative energy. Why? To power this AI, the artificial intelligence revolution, guys.
Right, and that's why Google's there building a major data center, and that's why it's an opportunity for American companies to invest there, and that's why it's important they remain an ally.
Great job, Lucas. All that Naval Academy experience right there definitely coming to play this morning. Thanks, brother.
Lucas, really quickly, can I ask you one more thing?
You bet.
This delegation, we're seeing people shaking hands with the president, a lot of individuals. Are they all leaders? Are they, some look like they're more Americanized?
Yes, these are political and business leaders. It's really, if you will, all the top brass in Saudi Arabia, Ainsley. The who's who of Saudi Arabia is here in Riyadh. And again, the capital of Saudi Arabia, there's no question that this is the highest level of both military and diplomatic honors that the Crown Prince, there you see a woman right there, not with full abaya, just a little example of some of the loosening of restrictions here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Wow. So, Lucas, well, hang in with us. We're going to bring in Hudson Institute Senior Fellow, National Security Analyst Rebecca Heinrichs. Rebecca, a lot is expected of this trip, but by the president picking it first, it means a lot to Saudi Arabia, doesn't it?
Well, it's massive if you contrast it, as Lucas was saying, to the previous administration, which really started its term insulting the Saudis, bringing up, as you brought up, Brian, the human rights violations. And it really had a chilly effect on U.S., Saudi, and Gulf relations throughout the entire term of the Biden administration. So now the Trump administration is coming in and saying, look, we have some serious overlapping interests. Let's focus on those. We care about human rights, but if you really do want to see improvements in human rights across the world, that's a situation in which the United States is the strongest power, which means we got to box out the Chinese. We got to box out where the Chinese are coming into these Gulf states. And so first and foremost, you have to have the United States have this close partnership with the Saudis and the Emiratis in particular.
Right. Just a note that with our delegation much smaller, and they just greeted MBS, and there's Susie Wiles having some quality time with MBS.
Real quickly, though, Rebecca, this is important because Iran wants to unite the Muslim world, the Arab world, and our relationship with the Saudis could stop that, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, you want to have the United States, and this is why the Abraham Accords were so successful during the first Trump administration, is because President Trump was clear, we stand with Israel, we're not going to compromise on that. But here, look, we can collaborate to counter Iranian hegemony, to counter terrorism throughout the Middle East. And we can do that collaboration with you, Saudi Arabia, with you, United Arab Emirates. And remember, it was the United States with the Saudis and the Emiratis that took care of the Houthis during the first Trump administration. All of that really was set back during the Biden administration whenever the United States didn't have such a close relationship with the Saudis.
You were pointing out, Ainsley?
Yeah, we were trying to. We thought it was Jeff Bezos from the back, but when he turned around, I don't think so. I'm not sure.
Oh, there's David Sachs. So, yeah, it looks like the businessmen and women who made the trip are also being introduced.
And Rebecca, talk about that, because Elon's there, Mark Zuckerberg's there. I know that Saudi Arabia wants access to U.S. technologies to advance their AI, their semiconductors for tech. And that is a way that President Trump could ice out China, correct?
Oh, yeah. You want to ice out the Chinese, and you want the United States to be the preeminent power. So you have to look to see where are the advantages of your partners. They're going to be working on this kind of technology. They want to lead on it. They want to be a leading participant. And so you want to kind of hug them close. You want to know what they're working on. You want United States to benefit from it, to leverage their advances. And so the closer we can work with them and find mutual interests, the better it's going to be. Again, during the Biden administration, a lot of these countries did look to China and to Russia. And it's an axis. It's the Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians, and the North Koreans. They're all looking to box us out. Right. So to the extent we can pull these countries into our orbit, the better.
Rebecca, what do you think? What do you think the Iranians are up to? Multiple visits to Saudi Arabia prior to the U.S. arriving. We're having a fourth round of talks with Iran. Many people, I don't know anybody who believes that Iran is actually going to dismantle their nuclear program. Why are they running to Saudi Arabia, their arch enemy, before this visit? What do you think's going on?
Well, they're looking for deals. I mean, this region, again, this is a deal-making region, and I think the Iranians probably want the Saudis to find areas where the two of them can mutually benefit against the United States, try to triangulate. So you all were talking about the civil nuclear program. The Saudis want to have one as well, again, but the United States does not want, if you do not have a nuclear program, we do not want you to get a nuclear program. So Potentially, you could have some development outside your country of enrichment. We could bring that in. But the Saudis are not going to get something that the Iranians want that we're going to prohibit to the Iranians. So potentially they're collaborating on that front. Or the Iranians might be trying to get the Saudis to say, we need the United States to recognize a Palestinian state. Yeah. I think that's a deal breaker for the United States. After October 7th, you're not going to have October 7th, that terrible genocidal event against the Israelis, be the event that precipitates something like a breakthrough, like a recognition of a Palestinian state. Yeah. But I would suspect that that's something that the Iranians would want.
And real quickly, Rebecca, you got Elon Musk right there with the Crown Prince and the President of the United States having this thorough conversation. As you can see, he's getting more time than the rest of the business community.
Respected by everybody around the world for his
technology.
Absolutely.
It's just not some knuckleheads in Seattle who want to burn Tests.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't care.
Rebecca, can we get back to what you were talking about when it comes to the Palestinian state? There has to be some middle ground, though, right? Hamas has to go, but it looks like a lot of people in the Arab and Muslim world, the thought of there not being a Palestinian state worries them, and it seems like it's a deal breaker for them.
I think you made an important point, though, earlier, which is that they don't want to take any of the individuals in Gaza, though, that are suffering under, really, it's Hamas's fault that they're suffering, but the Israelis are trying to take out Hamas the best that they can. And I would just suggest, look, there's plenty of Muslim states, more than 24 Muslim states, and any of these Gulf partners can take more of the individuals who are currently residing in Gaza. I mean, and I would say there's only one Jewish state, and so I think that after October 7th, the world has changed, and so that might be something that's important to them. But again, I think President Trump has enormous power and leverage, and he can strike other deals with them that would be important and bring true and lasting peace. And I think, again, it's going to be staying really close with our partners, our allies, the Israelis.
Hey, Rebecca, last question for this portion of our program as we watch the delegation, the American delegation, meet the Crown Prince. How disturbed or how worried are the Israelis that we are not necessarily communicating with them like we were earlier, and that maybe a lot of these talks and the deal with the Houthi rebels was done without their consultation, Eden Alexander negotiations, without them intimately involved? How worried are they?
They shouldn't be worried.
I think that I think we got to be honest. They're nervous. The first administration's success, again, I would return to what worked the first time. Hold the Israelis very close, even as you extend an open hand to the Gulf partners. That seems to be a little bit different this time, although our ambassador in Israel, Mike Huckabee, has said no, the United States is still ironclad committed to Israel. So there might be just a little bit of disinformation happening in the media, so we kind of have to sit tight and be patient. But I would understand. I would understand why the Israelis would feel a little bit uncomfortable. I would just encourage, our administration and the Bibi Netanyahu administration to make sure that they're standing shoulder to shoulder after all this trip and to demonstrate that there's no light between us.
Yeah, Israel will always be an ally of America. That goes back to biblical times. So it's just, it's a commitment that we, as a country, as a Christian country, have made. But thank you so much.
I'm Steve. Yep. But I like the way he handled the situation by, you have to be a diplomat. And to some extent, there's some things that Israel wouldn't agree to. So the fact that he just did it without, getting permission from Israel. I mean, there should be no reason an American president should be taking permission from Israel. But, everybody has their own reservation. All right, OG.
Mr. President,
Air Force One.
Thank you very much. Okay, by the way, we're on a beautiful Air Force One. Not a bad plane.
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. It's a beautiful plane, and we're doing a lot of business. We have a lot of good things happening.
Okay, so this is an amazing week so far. You get a deal with China. I'm just going to list it, and then we can get into detail. India and Pakistan played a big role. Hopefully, the peace stands. You slash prescription drug prices. Most favored nation, the American people will get first dibs in terms of prices. The last American hostage has been released. We're on this trip to Saudi Arabia, Qatar. There's not much going on in your life, is there?
Well, I've been busy, but I've enjoyed it because we're getting things accomplished. We're getting things done. You can have times when you're working very hard and not getting things done. That happens too. but we're getting a lot done. I don't think there's ever been a little period like this with the potential nuclear war. And two countries, they have very good leaders, people I know very well, and you know, it was a very important process. We got involved with India and Pakistan.
You got involved early. Can you give us a little insight what happened behind the scenes? How were you able?
Well, I didn't like what was happening, and you hear, you know, they're two very strongly nuclear countries, very, very powerful amount of nuclear too, serious stuff. And if that ever started, boy, that's the beginning of something that could be really bad. Even a minimal, you could have millions of people killed. And with one shot, two shots, and I just thought it was something we could get involved in. And I did a good job, Marco did a good job, and JD did a good job. We sort of were a team, and we, I think, convinced them to let's have peace and let's go and make trade deals. If we can make trade deals, we like that much better than nuclear weapons. Thanks. And that was a great thing, and we did a good job with the Houthis. They stopped with the shooting of the ships. They like shooting ships down.
Is that a done deal? Because there's been conflicting reports that some of their leaders are saying, oh, that's not true.
Well, it is with respect to America. Now, you know, you can't always count on somebody necessarily telling the truth, but their surrogates were very strong, very powerful, very good relationship with them. You know, they're tough fighters. They can take a lot of punishment, but with respect to America, they say it's true. So we'll see. You'll know. You'll be the first to know, won't you?
I follow the news closely. I read everything. I think the biggest surprise from this weekend, it was a week ago Friday, where I saw that China announced, quote, if the president is serious, we will be willing to negotiate with him. And Scott Bessent, your Treasury Secretary, met with their representatives in Geneva on Saturday. On Monday, you're announcing a trade, well, actually on Sunday, you announced a deal with China.
Yeah.
How did that happen that quickly?
Well, they met on Saturday and Sunday, and they had a deal pretty much from the beginning. It was the concept of a deal. And, you know, one of the things that, as you know, it's sort of a 90-day deal as we negotiate other aspects. But one of the things I think that could be most exciting for us and also for China is that we're trying to open up China. Because, as you know, many years ago we opened up the USA. Now it's time for China to open up, and that's part of our deal. And we're going to open up China. To me, that's the most exciting part. But, yeah, we made a deal. The relationship is very good. I've always had a good relationship with President Xi. It was interrupted because of COVID, obviously. But outside of that, I've always had a great relationship, a lot of respect for him. And we'll see how that all works out. But we have the confines of a very, very strong deal with China. But the most exciting part of the deal, it was mentioned, but we don't talk about it yet. That's the opening up of China to U.S. business. And that would be like opening up a whole new world, and I think it would be even better for China. So I think we'll be able to make that deal, I hope.
At any point, do you foresee yourself dealing directly with President Xi on the final details of this deal?
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I'm not sure that it'll be necessary, but that happened with the UK. We were close to a deal, but we needed 1 point or 2 points on pork and ethanol, okay, two very different subjects. And I called up the Prime Minister, who's an excellent man, Keir, excellent man, and within about 3 minutes it was over. We made the deal. It was a good deal for everybody. And we have a lot of deals now. We have a lot of trade deals that I'd say virtually everybody wants to make a deal.
When I first saw you, and thank you for letting us cover this and report on this from Air Force One. When I first saw you, I think you were more excited. You were excited about the China deal, but prescription drugs, which has been very, very painful for a lot of Americans. 80% of medications are created in America, and then we end up paying more for those medications. Foreign countries do not pay as much as we do. You said that is over. Can you explain why this is such a big deal?
Well, for many years we were taken advantage of by other countries and the drug companies, but I blame the other countries in a way more, the European Union, etc. They were very nasty and very tough to the drug companies, and they would give them a very low price for drug costs in the European nations. And when that price was given, that was it. They wouldn't negotiate. They said, let America pay for the difference. And this happened all over the world with other countries. And we had stupid people leading us, and especially over the last 4 years. And they wouldn't do anything about it. And it turned out that we were paying, and sometimes you saw 10 times more for the same drug. Same drug, same company, same plant where they make it, laboratory. And it got to a point where I said, we're not going to do this anymore. The pharmaceutical industry is very powerful, and probably the most powerful, considered the most powerful lobby. And the Democrats were making it impossible to lower drug prices. They knew what they were doing. And I instituted a most favored nations provision or concept where we're going to pay whatever the lowest country pays in the world. So if it's the UK, which pays very low, in any country, it could be any country, whatever the lowest price is. And the drug companies have accepted it, everybody accepts it, but the Democrats never wanted to play ball. They never wanted to do anything. It's the Democrats' fault that people were being ripped off for years and years. And now I hear Democrats saying, oh, well, we're going to now go for the bill. It's going to be very hard for them not to approve the big, beautiful bill that we're doing. We're doing the biggest tax cuts in the history of our country, because people are going to be getting a 50 to a 90% reduction in drug prices, not a 0.5%. I remember when I would fight so hard to get a 0.5 point, and I actually had it down a 0.5 point for 1 year, and I was so proud of myself because that never happened before. It was always going up. Drugs only went in one direction, that's up. And now, after studying the industry, it's a very complex industry, but I figured it out, and I said it's not going to happen. But the Democrats fought very hard to keep the prices of drugs very, very high. They really are to blame for this because they should have done something about it. And when the Republicans went with requests, they said, we're not going to approve it. And now we have a unified Republican Party. But I think the Democrats are going to approve this bill, too, because how are they going to reject a 60, 70, 80% drug cut? I don't think they can.
I think it's going to be huge. The fact that these drugs are, the creation of these drugs, I mean, these companies have to go through a very arduous process to get approval by the government. They spend billions of dollars, and put aside whether or not, quote, people demonize big pharma. That's separate and apart. However, we usually end up creating them, and then we end up paying 10 times more, which is crazy.
Well, they used to use that, if I could interrupt, they used to use that as a reason why we were paying 5 and 10 times more than other countries. They say because of research and development. And I'd always say, well, what about you doing research and development for the rest of the world too? Why are we paying for 100%? So we paid 100% for research and development, which, along with other things, believe it or not, raised the price to a point where you were 5 to 10 times higher than the rest of the world. And I told the story today. It was well received. A friend of mine who's slightly overweight, to put it mildly, went to a drugstore in London, and he was able to get one of the fat shots. I call it the fat shots, the jabs, that you lose weight.
By the way, a lot of people laugh at that. Some people get offended by. I don't get offended by anything.
I'm just glad I didn't use his name. He's actually a very rich guy. He's a very successful guy.
He's glad you didn't use his name.
No, he's very happy. Oh. He knows exactly who I was talking about. He called. He said, that was interesting. He said he was very concerned that I might use his name. It might slip. No, he doesn't have to worry. But he went to London.
Oh, man.
And he bought this...
Ozempic, Wegovy, one of those?
I guess, yeah, I'm not sure which one. But he bought one of them, maybe Ozempic. And he bought it, and he called me. He said, hey, strange thing happened. I just bought a drug, same company, same plant, same everything. Everything was the same. In one case, I paid, in New York, $1,300, and in London, I'm paying $88. He said, what's going on? Now, he knew nothing. He's a very smart guy. He's a very rich guy. His big problem is he's seriously overweight. But I don't think the drug worked, okay, to be honest with you. But it makes him feel good anyway. But so what happens is he said to me, I paid $88, and in New York, I get it for $1,300 or something. A massive difference. And I said, that's right. The drug laws are very screwed up, and I'm doing something about it. He said, you better, because this is crazy. He didn't understand it, but he didn't understand why. And now he understands why, because he watched our news conference this morning, holding his breath, right? But he watched the news conference. But think of it. So he goes to London, and a lot of people go shopping in nearby or even far away countries, and they'll go away once a month or once a week or something. If it's a nearby country, they'll go right across the border and they'll buy the same drug for 1/10 the price as we pay in the United States. And a part of it is the power of the drug companies, which is a very big power. But I think a bigger part is the ruthlessness of other nations to screw the United States of America. And the European Union would be the top because they represent a lot of countries, and they're brutal, according to the drug companies tell me this, they're brutal in negotiations. They say, this is what we're going to pay. We're not going to pay any more. And if you need more, you get it from America. And so they get a low price, so we get a high price. And I ended it. And this has been going on for many years, but nobody realized that you could do. I think I figured out the system. Very complex chain of events take place, and I ended it. And I have to say, the drug companies were great. They were great. They said, look, it's time. They actually looked, they said, it's time.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe.
So there's been an update here that says that the Trump administration, they're actually ramping up for this week to send away more illegal migrants. This was an article from CNN. It says here that the Trump administration plans to deploy hundreds more federal agents to ramp up immigration enforcement across the country. So, of course, this means undocumented, keyword, ladies and gentlemen, undocumented immigrants are going to be arrested, okay? That was the update from, of course, the Trump administration when it comes to immigration. All right. Now, of course, most people don't agree with what Trump is doing with immigration, but it's necessary. All right. Coming from a person who came to this country about 8 years ago, I can tell you it is necessary because you want people to be able to come in the right way. Okay. If anybody can just come in and just say, you know what, crazy things happening in my country, I get it. But what about the people that are actually waiting in line legally, doing everything by the books? What do you expect them to do? Or how do you expect them to feel? So, yep, I support it.
Trump got an escort in Saudi Arabia. Not that kind. A military escort from the Saudi Air Force.
What?
47 kicking
Jesse,
off his first major
what are you
international
talking
trip.
about, bro? Oh, man. Jesse, that was funny, bro. Escort. If you know, you know. If you know about escorts, you know. So Jesse was talking about escorts.
And a military escort from the Saudi Air Force. 47 kicking off his first major international trip of the second term. Usually presidents go to Canada, Mexico, or a NATO ally first. Trump picked Saudi Arabia because that's where the money is. The Saudis rolled out the lavender carpet. Over there, lavender is a symbol of generosity. It represents the blossoming wildflowers in their deserts. Trump, right on cue, rocking a lavender tie to match. The Saudi crown prince breaking protocol and greeting Trump personally on the tarmac. Usually they send an underling. Trump got a handshake. Remember, Biden gave the prince a fist bump after calling him a pariah, then begged the kingdom to pump more oil. And the prince was like, sorry, Joe, not happening. In Saudi Arabia, to quote the great Lil' Kim, it's about money, power, and respect. That's Trump's language. A traditional welcome coffee ceremony followed, but POTUS isn't a coffee drinker. So they gave him a cup and he held it like it was poison. Trump over-caffeinated. Can you imagine? They should have just given him a Diet Coke. The Saudis claim Trump later took a sip, but we think he faked it.
Man, that's I have never seen, I don't know if you have a video or a clip or whatever, okay, of Trump actually putting something in his mouth. I've never seen him eating anything, drinking anything in public. I have never seen a video or a picture of Trump actually drinking stuff. He never eats in public. He never drinks in public. It's like he's so self-aware because you never know. People are wicked in this world.
The coffee ritual symbolizes hospitality, friendship, honor, and respect. Back in the Beast, dozens of Arabian horsemen holding American and Saudi flags escorted him through the streets. In Saudi Arabia, horses represent beauty, nobility, and pride, whereas in America, they're just another thing we bet on. Then the honor guard welcomed the president, each holding golden swords. The Arab swords stand for justice, strength, and sovereignty in Saudi culture. But the most meaningful symbol of all, a mobile McDonald's truck. The way to a man's heart is through his stomach. But Trump didn't grab a Big Mac. He had other lunch plans. The Saudis hosted the whole cabinet, plus American business titans at the royal court. On the menu, miso beef with fermented vegetables and bacon crumbles to start. Main course, grilled black Angus and silky potatoes. And an extra virgin olive oil parfait with strawberry salad for dessert. But they barely had time to eat. They were too busy cutting deals.
We have the biggest business leaders in the world here. And they're going to walk away with a lot of checks for a lot of things that you're going to provide. And in the United States, it's probably 2 million jobs that we're talking about.
Executives from Coca-Cola, Citigroup, IBM, Delta, United, BlackRock, Google, and Amazon all in the desert with Trump. Also, Musk was there. Big balls stayed in D.C. to watch the fraud. But 47's the main attraction. He managed to shake every hand in the kingdom. If you were a Saudi citizen, you probably shook his hand. After a record rope line, the prince drove the president around in a golf cart before dinner, then played Trump's favorite song.
It's in Saudi, ladies and gentlemen. They played Lee Greenwood. They also played YMCA. That's ultimate respect, yo. In Saudi. This is Saudi, ladies and gentlemen, not America.
Survived too long in Saudi Arabia, but that's neither here nor there. Golf, McDonald's, jet, swords, and the YMCA. The Saudis are laying it on thick. But Trump came on a mission. Spread money and peace.
The new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism.
We know the Saudis aren't the nicest guys, but the Middle East isn't what you'd call a nice neighborhood. When you go to a bad neighborhood, it's nice to have a friend. Biden called the prince a killer. What'd that get us besides $5 gas? Not a lot. Trump took a different tack.
If I didn't like him, I'd get out of here so fast. You know that, don't you? He knows me well. I do. I like him a lot. I like him too much. That's why we give so much, you know? Too much. I like you too much.
Diplomat.
Great guy.
After that, Trump was basically like, how do you sleep at night?
Mohammed, you sleep at night? How do you sleep? Huh? Just thinking. What a job.
Gas prices is about to go to like 75 cents. Telling y'all, gas prices is about to go all the way down. All right? So you better get ready for affordability.
Tosses and turns like some of us. Tosses and turns all night. How do I make it even better all night? It's the ones that don't toss and turn. They're the ones that will never take you to the promised land, won't they? But you have done some job.
The point of the trip is to tell the region, let's make money, not war. Nobody wants their legacy written in blood. Put down the sword and take out the checkbook.
Just days ago, my administration successfully brokered a historic ceasefire to stop the escalating violence between India and Pakistan. And I used trade to a large extent to do it. I said, fellas, come on, let's make a deal. Let's do some trading. Let's not trade nuclear missiles.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. It is your boy Genesis. I just saw a comment in the chat. Person said, Biden would never get this type of respect. But why though? Is it because they felt he was weak, or they just didn't like the way he portrayed America? Why do you think Biden wouldn't get this type of respect? Is it because he was falling upstairs? I mean, that obviously doesn't look good to, other countries. But why do you think Biden wouldn't get the same respect that Trump got? Is it because Trump is a billionaire? Or is it because Trump says what he thinks? Is it because Trump says to the whole world, put yourselves first, because I will put America first? Do you think that's why they respect him? Because he actually says what he thinks, what he feels? He doesn't care who likes it or not? I think that's why.
So let's trade the things that you make so beautifully.
But if there's no respect, there's no mercy.
I will never hesitate to wield American power if it's necessary to defend the United States or to help defend our allies. And there will be no mercy for any foe who tries to do us or them harm.
That was a message to the Iranians and all their proxies in the region, and for that matter, anyone around the world who gets frisky. It's just day one of the Middle East tour, and Trump's bringing home the bacon. The biggest arms deal in history. Plus, the prince signed over $600 billion in investments, but Trump wants $1 trillion.
The investment in America was up an astounding 22%. More than $10 trillion of new investments have been announced or are coming just since the election on November 5th.
Looks like the experts were wrong again. They said Trump couldn't bring back manufacturing. Now countries are paying us to make their chips. They said tariffs would trigger inflation. Well, it just hit the lowest rate in 4 years. JP Morgan says there isn't going to be a recession, and the stock market is up on the year. Oh, and eggs are cheaper.
Oil is down, eggs are down, food is down. We're seeing that reflected. So all that hysteria over tariffs is not showing up in these numbers.
Why do they keep calling the experts if they're wrong every time?
Please, Jesse. Why? The experts say we're going to go into recession. The experts say the economy is going to tank. The experts say we cannot keep this. The experts, which experts? Where are these experts from? Okay? Where? Oh, the experts from Harvard. They said the country is going to tank. The experts? I don't know.
Trump's telling Muslims to stop killing each other and instead make a killing here in America. And it's working. Do you think the Democrats will give him any credit?
Nope.
Nah.
Nope. They'll never give him credit. I don't know what Trump can actually do, but they would give him credit for it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, along with Katie Pavlich, Marie Harf, Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five.
All right, here we go.
The Democrats who really want Joe Biden to go away, well, they might want to buckle up because we're getting another brutal bombshell about the cover-up of former President Biden's mental decline. Privately, advisors debated whether a wheelchair would be required to get him through a second term. The president's doctor privately said that if he had another bad fall, a wheelchair might be necessary, and quipped that Biden's staff members were trying to kill him while he was trying to keep him alive.
Oh, man.
These revelations.
Oh, man. Just thank God we're past these times. Look at our president. This is the president of the United States. This was the president of the United States. Look at him.
Required to get him through a second term. The president's doctor privately said that if he had another bad fall, a wheelchair might be necessary, and quipped that Biden's staff members were trying to kill him while he was trying to keep him alive. These revelations shouldn't come as a shock if you were watching The Five during the Biden presidency, and now one of the book's co-authors is using the L word to describe the White House.
Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters, trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet.
There are critics, however, that are pointing this out. The Tapper's record on the subject isn't exactly squeaky clean.
Exactly.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
It's very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable.
You are
to watch somebody on stage
That's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that the Washington Post just put out a piece examining how President Biden embraces his stutter, talking about it, while Trump mocks it, exaggerates.
This is what the media does, okay? This is the truth. They're going to turn the truth around. I'll tell you something else. Now, after what? After like what? A couple of months? It's like a year and some months. Now Jake is saying, well, the White House was lying all this while. They've been lying to us. The same Jake in 2024. Well, I guess I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I guess he didn't know, so he was just saying things that he thought was right. I guess. I'm not sure. But it was so evident that the decline was oozing out. Man, him falling on stage, falling upstairs, falling off bikes, going into the Amazon rainforest, that's like, yo, you cannot run again. This same folks were saying he's capable. He should go for a second term. He should go for a second term. Why?
It, belittles it. He's sharp physically. I mean, mentally. Yeah. I think the question is physically, right? He's 81, and his memory, it doesn't seem great. It's not horrible.
But that's not all, folks. Joe Biden apparently did not recognize George Clooney at their fundraiser and had to be told who he was by an aide. Now, that is an outrage, isn't it? Which apparently left the superstar shaken to his core. And that was the part that I thought was pretty funny. Like, imagine you're George Clooney, Jesse, and somebody doesn't recognize you. Like, when that happens to you, is it really upsetting?
It is.
How dare they? And then George Clooney said, all right, I'm going to write the op-ed that does him in.
Did him in. Barack, remember, told him to write the op-ed.
Yeah.
Clooney doesn't do anything.
That was Denzel Washington.
Denzel. He's the black actor, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, wheelchairs, there's nothing
Black
wrong with wheelchairs.
No.
I use them all the time at the airport.
Bro.
You don't even have to have a doctor's note. You could just say you're late and they'll wheel you around. You give them $20. It's fine. We were just talking about what we would have called Joe if he was in a wheelchair. Asleep at the wheel. You would have been.
You were talking about it.
Yes.
Yeah, that was just me, wasn't it? So I want to just talk to the people that don't watch us. How would I do that if they're watching us? But let me put it differently. Do you like to time travel? Do you like to see the future? Well, I have something in store for you. You can just watch Fox and you don't have to buy books from CNN. Okay? You'll know the future by watching us. That's how this goes. Now, Jake, this is what the media is doing. I wasn't a part of the cover-up. Ron Klain's like, no, it was Dr. Jill. Tapper's like, oh, no, we were trying real hard. It's everybody's pointing their finger. He's getting paid to write a book about what we said 4 years ago. And we had Rand Paul on last night. And Rand Paul was against tariffs. He was against the Muslim plane and the drug prices. And that's fine, because at this company, you can say whatever you want if it's your opinion. We don't have to toe the line here. Now, if you go back 4 years and someone had gone on CNN and said, Biden's brain dead, the lab leak, the laptop, they would have cut your mic and you would have been banished from CNN. Now, being banished from CNN is a badge of honor, but still, you can hear the truth.
It's a badge of honor.
Joe Biden had done decently in that debate, cover-up still would have happened. There would have been no book. There would have been no book advance. We would not be hearing about this. They would just slapped him in a wheelchair on November 6th, and they would have said, see, he's just like FDR. They're both in wheelchairs, and they both defeated Nazis. What's more dangerous? Trump being president or a secretive cabal of unelected officials controlling the president, using auto pen and overruling him, and then lying to the public about it? What's more unconstitutional? What's more corrupt? In a way, Trump saved democracy.
That's brilliant.
Brilliant.
And you can
even
say
for
whatever
me.
you want here.
And that doesn't make it
Brilliant
right.
even
The
for
one
me.
thing that really bothers me, Greg, is that still there's so many anonymous sources, but they're not anonymous because they're worried that Democrats will be mad at them. They're worried that they're going to be caught as liars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That matters at this point. I love that they thought that he needed a wheelchair if he won. Apparently, he wouldn't need one if he didn't win. No, they just didn't care. They didn't care about his health at all. They just worried about the optics, that he would need a wheelchair if he won. I am tired of these books. They should have watched The Five. They should have watched Fox. We were doing the reporting in real time, not right now. The books are now just an admission of guilt. The Dems can never bring up the 25th Amendment ever again. Even if Trump's brain is in a vat in the Oval Office running the country, we're going to say, oh, no. He's sharp as a tack. But there's this other thing about the media's excuse, which is killing me. The White House was lying to us. Well, duh.
Yeah,
That's to be expected. It's called spin. Your job is to assume that they're not telling you the truth. You're a journalist. You just don't go, oh, they say Joe's fine, nothing to see here. I mean, you should offer a little bit more resistance, than Facebook asking if you're 18. That's how bad it is. So it's not about the media. It's not about Joe's condition at all. Nobody cares at this point. It's the media's condition. There are two diagnoses. One, you're the dumbest, most incompetent generation of journalists ever on the planet. Or two, you deliberately covered up Joe's dramatic decline because you're biased. That is all you have. There's no in between. I would say, if I were them, I would come clean and go, you know what? We knew Biden was a mess. It was obvious. But as Democrats, we preferred him over this existential threat known as Donald Trump. And they had called him Hitler, which meant anytime they criticized Biden, they would get grief for helping Hitler. So they couldn't actually be honest, or else that would be seen as somehow doing something horrible. But the media, Biden's still alive. The media is dead. Put a tag on their toe, call Quincy, shove the body in a fridge because the corpse, it's starting to reek.
Yep. And who's going to identify the body? Well, I have a suggestion. Chuck Schumer was asked about this, and we have a little sound. Watch here.
You said in June of last year, in my meetings with President Biden, I found him to be in command and impressive and wielding influence to make progress on key priorities. But in that same month, Biden apparently did not even recognize George Clooney at a fundraiser. Were you being straight with the American public?
Look, we're just looking forward.
Of course.
Marie, is that going to cut it for Democrats? I know you want Democrats to win and be successful in the future. Will that help?
No, and I think because I want Democrats to win, and because I think Donald Trump is an existential threat to many of the things we care about, the fact that the people in the White House who agree with me on that, in the Biden White House, they believed this about Trump winning again. They knew how problematic that would be for so many of the things they have fought for. And yet in 2017 and 18, 19, 20, they saw they got him elected, and then they saw the decline continue. And after the midterms, I've talked to lots of my friends who've worked in that White House. After the midterms, there was never a conversation about whether he should run again because Democrats overperformed, right? We did better than people thought we would. Biden took credit, and nobody had the courage in that White House to stand up to him and Jill Biden and say, if you run again, we will lose. And the fact that it got to the June of the election year, and that disastrous debate performance for him to be forced out. I mean, we had no chance at that point, right? Kamala, you can't run a campaign with no primary, being anointed in 100 days.
Yeah.
And I am the fact that George Clooney had more courage than every elected Democrat. They made fun of Dean Phillips, right? To say the things.
They didn't recognize him.
Well, but he didn't recognize.
Ultimate insult
It
in
sounds
Hollywood.
like he didn't recognize a lot of people that worked for him.
Yeah.
The fact that he was the only one to say, I need to write a New York Times op-ed, and all these people, now they're coming out, most of them anonymously, which I agree is I don't like. David Plouffe, God bless him.
At least he's willing to be on the record.
At least
he's
this is
willing to
one
be
of
on the
those
record.
points where George Clooney or a celebrity could actually say, do you know who I am?
You don't even know.
there's so much anger, and I like Joe Biden a lot. I don't like that his legacy will always be
It will always be this.
And his team did that to him.
Kate.
Exactly.
Kate. T.
KT.
You're not my assistant, Kate. You're Katie. There are 200 Democratic insiders quoted in here. A lot of them are anonymous. Even their current spokespeople, they want to remain anonymous. They don't want anything to do with this.
Okay. They are still so afraid of just speaking the truth about what happened that they're not willing to come out on the record on this when everybody could see what was going on. Nobody was courageous. George Clooney wasn't courageous. Barack Obama wasn't courageous. Nancy Pelosi wasn't courageous. Democrats had a choice. They could have had a primary. And instead of having a primary, they were running around suing RFK Jr. and Dean Phillips, trying to keep them off of ballots. There was a choice here.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
They also didn't want a primary because Biden and his team did not believe that Kamala Harris could win.
Well, after he dropped out. So they lost the opportunity on 2 primaries, on the front end and on the back end. They lost 2. So much for democracy. They were all fine with this because they wanted Joe Biden to stay in office because he was an empty vessel. They were allowed to push through whatever they wanted. We still have no answers about who was actually making these decisions. We don't even have a lot of information still on the day that he dropped out and posted his resignation letter for the campaign on Twitter. We don't have very much information about that. So this is about a lack of trust. And for Jake Tapper to come out now and say, oh, well, the White House was lying. Well, so were you. And CNN covered a presidential election. Sure. And you don't think that it was pertinent to the American people and important for them to know about all of these details? And now all of a sudden that these anonymous sources and people are willing to talk about it, they want a pat on the back for saying what was obvious. We have more details now, but this was happening. And for now them to say the doctor was recommending there may need to be a wheelchair for the second term, let's not forget they never made the White House doctor available for questioning, not a single time.
Do you think there will be a congressional hearing?
I do.
Okay.
Probably.
Yes.
With that being said, thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. God bless you. Shout out to Mr. Booski, Zyro's Garden. C. Shelley for sure. I saw Nikki here, but I say hours ago because we've been streaming for almost 4 hours now. Okay, so I gotta go tuck my beautiful daughter. I gotta go tuck her in, okay, because she loves daddy's hugs and kisses before she goes to bed. But with that being said, instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. And believe in Almighty God. And never, ever give up, okay? Just use your president, okay? Use your president as an inspiration because this man, everybody counted him out in 2021, 2022, 2023. Indicted him, raided his home, made sure they subpoenaed his kids. But guess what? He came back like a phoenix from the ash. You know what time it is, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be back. So shout out to the veterans. Shout out to the military personnel. God bless you. And take care of your kids, ladies and gentlemen. Take care of your kids. All right? I got to go. I will be back. Stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel. And love you guys, man.